So we're just gonna do this thing. Our Flag Means Death, season 2, rewrite. And in by rewrite, I am mostly trying to keep it in line with, like, this is another draft of the season they already wrote, trying to keep it mostly in line with what was already there, mostly in line with what I think they were intending to do, to the best of my ability to tell. So also keeping in mind their like budget issues and whatnot. This is not my fantasy, this is a rewrite of the season. So with that said, got my keys, got my notebook, let's go. Episode 1, Impossible Birds. Very first thing is gonna be the very first thing, the dream sequence that Steed has. So it was kind of weird watching it like the first time, right as it, you know, the episode dropped, aired, whatever. I thought that it was supposed to be like a parody sort of thing. It didn't quite go hard enough for a parody, but I assume that's what they were going for. But like having now seen the whole season and gone back and rewatched it all to do this, and like seeing other people's reactions and stuff, I think maybe it was just like a regular fantasy, maybe like that's what they were going for, like comedic, but like just a fantasy. But I watch it and it still reads like it's a not quite there parody, a kind of failed parody. So that's the first thing I would say. Just I go a little harder, make it full on, very obviously parody, you know, and that's really more a directing thing, I think, than a writing thing in this case. You know, we gotta tell the actors to go even more over the top. Maybe we can get like they make mustache extensions, right, for Izzy, so he gets like a big, huge, ridiculous villain mustache. And like, I mean, I saw a take where Steed and Tyke like hug and they follow the beach, and except for a wave comes up over them in this take, and they took that take out. Now I think leave it in, leave the one where they just so totally randomly get swamped by a wave, because this is ridiculous, it's parody, whatever. So do that. Then once we get to the end of the dream sequence, that's where the first actual writing thing comes in. So we're gonna have you know, Steed like, oh, you know, I love you, I missed you, whatever. And Ed says, you know, I love you, I missed you, Lucius. And Steve's gonna be like, pardon? And Ed will repeat himself, but this time when he says it, he's gonna be saying it as in Pete's voice. And then Steve will wake up. And he's in that little room, and he turns and looks, and he sees Pete. He's in the corner room, he's all huddled up, and he's just sobbing about how much he misses Lucius. And then we're gonna see Steed is going to crawl over to Pete, come sit next to him, keep the camera angles tight. We don't want to see the rest of the room yet for reasons that I'm sure y'all can all guess. But so Steed sits down next to Pete. We don't have E names. Anyway, Steed sits down next to Pete and is like, hey, you know, it's okay. You know, I'm sure he's fine. Like, you know, Jim and Frenchie, they were on the ship, like they'll look out for him. And you know, it seemed like he was making good friends with Fang, and Fang's been on Blackbeard's crew forever. You know, he will be fine. I'm sure he's fine. And Pete is just like, oh yeah, you really think so? And Steve's like, yeah, you know, definitely. I think we're all gonna get back to the ship, and we're gonna find the rest of our crew, and everyone's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. And so Pete is like, kind of like, calm down, he's feeling better now. And then, you know, kind of like let that sit for a moment. And then Steve's like, So one thing I did notice, like every night for the past 10 nights, maybe we can just like find you another outlet or somewhere quieter to cry. And then Pete's like, whoa, hey now. None of us complain when you keep us up all night moaning, Ed, oh, Ed. And Steve's like, whoa, I don't do that. And then now is when we pan back and we see the whole crew, and we see that they're in this tiny little prison cell, and they're all jammed in there, and they're like, yeah, you do. So that's our comedy beat to end that little moment on. And so I will confess, the reason I originally started looking at what can we do different in this moment is I just don't think fart jokes are very funny. But you actually get a lot more out of switching this scene out to this new one. Beyond that, to the point where like that becomes a very low on the priority. Just hold on, I'll get my list here. First of all, it just kind of helps establish the fact that the crew that we have here are missing the rest of the crew who are no longer with them. Because we just don't get a whole lot of that. And in that same vein, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I do think maybe when Steed and Olu are talking as they're walking up to the soup shack, also maybe get a little line from Olu in there in that same vein about how we are all eager to get back. So just kind of, we really had this like strong sort of found family vibe by the end of the first season, but coming into this, we just don't. Blackbeard's crew, who I'll circle to them in a minute, I kind of feel that they are maybe missing everyone, but I don't feel it as much from the Steed side of the crew in this first episode. And that also kind of gives us a clearer understanding of what this side of the crew motivation is for staying with Steed. Because, like, obviously Steed's not paying them anymore. He doesn't have any money. But if we understand that, yes, we are all really motivated to try to find our ship again, try to find the rest of our crew again, even though everyone else, except for Steed, is very scared of, Blackbeard and this whole new wave of crime that he's going on. But we're all determined because we want to reunite with everyone else. Then there is also kind of a hint in that, too, that maybe Steed kind of has a better understanding of what is kind of up with Ed and knows more than he's letting on. Because you might notice when I was doing that, we had Steed say, Jim and Frenchie and Fang will look out for Lucius, but he doesn't mention Ed. And I even had him say, Fang's been on Blackbeard's crew. So, like, on some level, Steed understands that Ed's not really in that best mind space right now. So it kind of gives us that. And also, with this kind of sets us up with the Pete and Lucius thing too, kind of having their romance be a sort of B-plot romance. So reminding us that that is a romance right off the beginning. So it works well too. So then we have our first scene is a parody fantasy, but of Steed and Ed reuniting. And our last scene in the show is going to be, Ed and Steed together. But then our second scene is going to be, Pete missing Lucius. And our second to last scene is Pete and Lucius getting married, right? It makes nice little arc with that. And also can kind of remind us that as far as they know, Lucius is still on Ed's crew, although Pete is expressing concerns here, maybe that he thinks Lucius could have died, right? Lucius is a lover, not a fighter. What's he doing in Blackbeard's crew? Because of course they don't know. So that's kind of like a lot of stuff that this little change can do. Moving on, I do want to stick with the Steed side of the plot line before we do, like I said, circle back to the Blackbeard crew side. So in that side, looking at the whole thing with the Swede and Spanish Jackie, I do think, keeping in mind that, again, they had those budget issues, so obviously Swede is being written off in this episode and then brought back later, but being written off for a while now, so we don't have to have them in future episodes because they, had to be budget conscious. And with that in mind, I do actually think that this was a pretty good way to do it. Having Swede fall in love and want to get married is like a compelling enough reason for us to be like, okay, we understand why he's going to stay behind without totally ruining the found family vibes again that we're trying to build for. And having it be Spanish Jackie works really well too, because we don't have time to really develop a real genuine romance for Swede, like a real genuine believable. But Spanish Jackie, we already have this setup of her having all these husbands, and we already know her character too, so we don't have to develop this whole new character. So that allows us to kind of take her, and the idea of her and Swede as a couple is kind of inherently that doesn't sound right. And so it's humorous enough that we can kind of make a joke out of this idea of him, even as we make it, they made it, feel like he actually very genuinely loves her, but it's also kind of a joke, and that works better. We have time to do the joke. We don't have time to actually give Sweet a genuine romance arc. However, I don't think the joke quite hits the way they want it to, and I think the big problem with that is the pacing of it is just off. Because what we have is, first we have this scene that introduces, it sets this up with this idea that they're all, begging Jackie to let them stay, give them a job, what have you. And she agrees on the condition that they basically, give Sweet to her. And she's, clearly hitting on him, giving the eyes. And he just, he seems like he's kind of uncomfortable, but also has no idea, what's going on. He just does not understand the deal that was just struck here. And then that was actually kind of a flashback. So we jump ahead to sometime later where, Jackie has found the money that Steve and the crew have been saving up, and she's got Sweet there, backing her up. And again, the vibe that Sweet is getting in this scene is that he's maybe a little uncomfortable. He doesn't want to be there doing this. He's not happy that he's betraying the crew, but he just also feels like he's maybe a little uncomfortable. And he also seems like he still doesn't totally get what's going on, right? Jackie calls her husband's in. He's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. We had breakfast. He doesn't really get it still. And then the next scene, which happens maybe later that day, maybe the next day, but pretty soon thereafter, all of a sudden Sweet's like, yes, I love Jackie. She's the love of my life. She has healed things in me that I didn't know were broken. And just really over the top. That's our punchline, right? Our setup is how unlikely this is, and their punchline is no, they are ride or die. This is real love. But it doesn't work because it's too much buildup. We have 2 scenes of buildup before the one scene of the punchline, and the punchline is not big enough or hits hard enough for those 2 scenes of buildup, especially since season 1 also kind of almost inadvertently at this point serves as buildup, because we got to know Jackie and Sweet's characters, and it's already inherent buildup in that. And then also in universe, the pacing feels weird because, like I said, we have them meeting, and then we have this huge time skip, and Sweet still seems uncomfortable, still seems like he doesn't know what's going on. And then we have one day, and all of a sudden he's ride or die. It doesn't work. So I really think the fix here is you just move the punchline to the previous scene with the money. And you can still have Sweet kind of sorry guys, but it's a sorry, not sorry, this is my wife, I'm ride or die, I'm whatever she wants now. So have him come in on that scene, fully intense, all in with Jackie. Maybe even, he has the new costume for the later episode. Maybe he's already done his costume change now, right? He's already wearing he's repping the merch. He is 100% here for Jackie at this point. And I think just by moving that there, it builds the pacing better. And then when Sweet is talking with them and they're trying to get him to help them out, he owes them. And he's like, oh my God, you guys, no, you don't understand. I love Jackie so much. It doesn't feel where did this come from? When did this happen? Because we already had the punchline and we already know where it came from. And so now we can, we already had our laugh about it. Now we can actually appreciate, oh wait, this is Sweet. He actually seems to really care about her. So that's that. Okay, great. So now we're going to jump over to the Blackbeard side of it. And really not so much Ed stuff. The Ed stuff actually is good. The Ed stuff in these first 3 episodes is all really good. The stuff that I have a problem in on that side of the plot for these first 3 episodes is really the Izzy stuff. I had a lot of problems with the Izzy stuff for the whole damn season. And they're different problems. The problem evolves. I don't know what they were trying to do with Izzy. Like, going into the second season was always going to be challenging with Izzy. Very divisive character with the fandom, where parts of the fandom just, like, he is a villain. We hate him. We do not want him to succeed. We do not want to see him, do well. Another part of the fandom, like, we love him because he is a villain. He is our little gremlin. We love that. And then a part of the fandom who just, like, genuinely loves him. There are varying degrees to how much they think that he is in the wrong, but loves him. He wants to see him do well, wants to see him succeed, wants to see him get, love and affection and acceptance, like, whole broad spectrum. And there's a lot of fighting about it. It was gonna be a hard thing to pull off no matter what you did. But I feel like what they did was specifically designed to piss everyone off. Like, nobody is gonna be happy with this version. So I don't know what happened, but it ain't good. So a lot of work in this rewrite as far as trying to fix Izzy up. My best understanding of what their intentions probably were was, we want to give Izzy a redemption arc, move him from being, the antagonist, the one who, at the end of the first season was really that final push into Ed becoming the Kraken, and who was, trying to kill Steed all through the season. Let him grow into this person that we can all, like, love, and we're happy to have part of the crew. And then, you got it, baby boy? Do you know what you're trying to do? But then go from there into this, the redemption means death, dramatic death at the end. Well, what should have been a dramatic death? Like, I'll be real, I'm one of the hate Izzy team, but the way he went out was just mean. Like, that was not fair to him at all. I'm gonna do better by him, I promise. So anyway, starting with this early scene here with him and the crew, where they give him this hug therapy, where they're like, oh my God, Izzy, we think your relationship with Ed is really toxic and we're really worried about you, and hugs, whatnot. I didn't like it, if you couldn't tell. No, I didn't like it. The crew did not like Izzy. He was their captain, and it took less than 24 hours for them to decide to mutiny on him. They were about to throw him overboard to his death if Ed hadn't conveniently shown up at just the right moment. And so in theory, I can believe that in these months of time skip between the two seasons, that, they have all gone through a lot of trauma together, and a lot of trauma bonding or whatever. In theory, I can believe that, but that all happened off screen, if it happened. And that's a big jump in character development and character relationships to not show your audience ever. We don't even get later flashbacks or stories expanding on how this relationship changed. They just love him now, and I hate it. So we need that scene. We're gonna need to pull it back. We're gonna go for something kind of similar. We're trying, like I said, we're gonna try to keep the same overall storyline, but it's gonna be less affectionate towards Izzy right now, because we are still building those relationships. We're still working on his redemption arc and getting him to where everyone likes him. So instead, how I would see that playing out is, you can still have, Izzy doing the 1,000-yard stare as he's thinking about the fact that it's do your job or I'm gonna fire you, and he's like, shit. That was his whole damn life is his job. That's fine, but he kind of looks like he's got tears in his eyes, and that's slowly acting calm, but I don't think that's what we need from you quite yet. I don't believe that Izzy's gonna cry in front of people yet. He's not there emotionally. But the Thasiar's there, that's good. And then like then he gets up and he tells everyone like, okay, we're gonna check this treasure overboard. And then instead of them being like, whoa, wait, Izzy, and like whatever, they're gonna be like, no, that's bullshit. We're not doing that. And Izzy's like, you're gonna do it. I'm telling you to do it. That's orders. And they're like, fuck Blackbeard's orders. That's stupid. You know that is stupid, Izzy. Like, no, this is insane. He is being insane. Like, yeah, no, this is ridiculous. We're not doing that. And like, and then kind of talking about how Ed is like doing, being horrible, doing horrible things to them, how he is generally contributing to a toxic vibe. And then turn on and it's like, and even you, how many of your toes has he cut off at this point or whatever, right? So they still have some of that like, sympathy for Izzy, like this is bad for you too, but it's less of a like, oh, we're so worried about you, and more of a, hey, this has been bad for everyone, including you. Think about it, you are supposed to be his first mate, and he's also being like all really horrible to you too. Like, get on our side. You are on our side on this. You should be. So that, more of that vibe. And that's what inspires Izzy to go talk to Ed. Because they're like, get on our side here. And he's like, damn, they're right. And then that kind of builds for our mind, like, okay, he is listening to the crew now. And it feels more believable because they are right. It is hurting him as well. But at the same time, it is him starting to build those relationships and work together with the crew rather than just shouting them down. So he goes to talk to Ed. That interaction, the biggest thing in that one is I would want to change Izzy's line about I have love for you, expressed like he has syphilis or something. But yeah, I have love for you. It's just, the delivery is about what I would expect from Izzy at that point in his emotional growth. But it's still a little too much. I don't believe that the only good feeling is anger, and like berating Ed for being, whining about his boyfriend or whatever. I just don't believe that this guy is going to be sitting here talking about how he has love for Ed. But we'll just change it to I care about you. Gets a similar sentiment across, but Izzy's not ready to drop the L word yet. We will get there, I promise, for people who really want that from him. We'll get there. We'll get there. So yeah, that's episode 1. Episode 2, red flags, and we will go ahead and just keep rolling with the Blackbeard side of the storyline. So first thing is with when we have Izzy and Archie doing the amputation of Izzy's leg, and Archie asks Jim, what's your interest in this guy? He seems like a dick. We're just gonna cut the one line from Jim, he's our dick. Because again, that it's trying to assert like that line gives a sense of like he's our jerk. It's a fond sounding line, right? He's like, even though he's a dick sometimes, we still love him kind of vibe, which again, I don't think they're there yet. I don't buy that. So just cut that he's our dick. So Archie's like, what's your interest in this guy? He seems like a dick. And Jim's like, yeah. But, there was a time on the ship when life meant something, the flow works fine without that line. And I don't think that they're there yet. The he was your friend from Jim to Ed, I don't love that line either, but I feel like it can maybe work. Just whatever, something similar, whatever, it's fine. Though later, after Ed and Izzy's conversation, when Ed walks out of the room, instead of saying I loved you best I could, we will change that to I cared for you as best I could. so it's properly mirroring the change that we made to Izzy's line in the previous episode, right? So I care about you. I cared for you the best I could. Just that. And honestly, I think it helps keep things a little more ambiguous. Like I said, Izzy's very divisive. He's also pretty decisive. Very divisive character. So I think having Ed say, I cared for you, leaves it more ambiguous to exactly in what way did he care for Izzy? Like, did he like genuinely care for Izzy like as a friend? Did he just care for Izzy in the sense that, you know, Ed is the captain and Izzy is his crew, and he was just like trying to you know, care for him like in that capacity? Like, it's more ambiguous, less likely to get people riled. I mean, I guess people are still going to argue over what is the correct interpretation, but it leaves it more open for people to kind of do what they want with it. So that's really it on the Ed side. I am really pretty happy with the Ed side overall. In these first 3 episodes, I think it's really well done overall. Switching back over to the Steed side in this episode, the biggest thing is I like a lot of it, really. The biggest thing though is with Lucius and Steed. When Steed is trying to talk with Lucius about, you know, hey, you need to let it out. It's okay if you're scared inside. You know, you just need to let it out. And then Lucius like starts to tell him, and then Steed is immediately like, oh shit, and runs. I see the joke that they're doing there, but I feel like it's a joke that betrays the character. Like, it's throwing the characterization of Steed over for a joke. It's making Steed into sort of the stereotype of the character he is, rather than who he genuinely is. Because Steed, he's Mr. like talk it through as a crew, and had this happened in the 2nd episode of the 1st season, then maybe I could buy that, you know, he like philosophically believes in that, but like he's not really prepared to deal with it. Like, he just maybe is, you know, not expecting the intensity and the type of trauma that pirates go through. But at this point, we're the 2nd episode of the 2nd season. Steed has been talk it through as a crew since day 1, and up until this point, we have never really seen a portrayal of that from him. Like, he has always, when he's always kind of been there when there has been those emotional issues. Like, we've never seen him do this kind of thing before, where someone is trying to express themselves and like express what they're feeling, and he just runs out on them. Like, if you were gonna establish this like idea that his character, that he can't live up to what he was saying, you needed to do it earlier on. It's too late for that. So the show, it does not work. I don't like it, and I just think, I also think that Steed, like, as a character, what he represents, again, is like that talk it through, and is about that ability to express your feelings to other people and be able to like get validation and support, and like that character, thinking of like audience members watching that character be like that and like live up to that ideal, like especially when we see him in season 1, definitely a lot with the interactions with Ed, he definitely fully lives up to that. And so to see this character not follow through on this now, I feel like it's kind of a betrayal of the audiences who maybe found comfort in that, who found strength in the idea of, you know, someone being willing to like listen to your pain and stuff, and all of a sudden, nope, there is trauma that's too big and he's just gonna run out. So, and if you can't tell Mr. Talk It Through as a crew about your stuff, like, who are you gonna be able to talk to? Especially when then Lucius is like, yeah, I tried to talk to Pete about it, and then we had to quit because he couldn't, you know, his tummy was hurting. And it's like, so just, Lucius doesn't get to talk to anyone about it, I guess. I don't like that. So instead, let's have Lucius, Seed's like, it's okay, I'm here for you. And Lucius is like, just starts going straight into it, starts straight drama cupcake. And you can still kind of have like a joke where Seed's like, oh, okay, right now, okay, yeah, sure, right now. Like he wasn't expecting that. Like he was thinking maybe we would like lead into it or like decide on time to talk or whatever. No, we're doing this now, okay. Like Reese does the great facial expressions. He could do it. So something like that, and that's gonna work better. Or I would want to cut some of those, like, I feel like some of these are like making jokes about the fact that Lucius has trauma. I don't like that. So just, we can tell the Pepper story and just kind of like cut out from there. And then you can still keep the joke about Pete, about how Lucius, Seed's like, hey, did you talk to Pete? And Lucius is like, yeah, well, we got started, but then his tummy, then he got sad and he had to stop and just have Seed be like, yeah, you might have to build up to the heavier stuff with him. So like, you still get that kind of a bit of that same joke, but it's with Pete, who like hasn't been the whole talking through. Like he's still been on his journey and through the first season, being able to accept emotions and trauma and stuff. So it makes more sense that he would have a hard time with it. And like we can feel more comfortable in the fact that Lucius didn't get to talk to Pete about everything yet, because we know that he already got to talk to Seed. So it's not like he's having to just keep it all in. He doesn't have anyone to talk to. And then the final change here, very minor change, but we have the whole map thing with Zhang's map, and like there's a whole thing where the boats are like crossing over Panama, and of course the Panama Canal doesn't exist, and then we have like the end thing where we see, no, actually they are physically dragging these boats across Panama. I'm sorry. I just cut that. I'll get more into when we get into the next episode why we're gonna cut that, but cut that. Which gets us into the next episode, episode 3, the Innkeeper. And now we can get into why I want to cut that. So about Zhang's character as a whole, it's kind of messy, because I feel like these first 3 episodes are really like building her up as an antagonist, right? We see her best Jackie in that their initial confrontation, and backtrack. The thing from the very first episode that I forgot, in that confrontation with Jackie, where Zhang's like, actually this much indigo is worth 3 times as much as what I paid for it. I don't like that. I feel like just say it's more. It's worth what I paid for it and more. The 3 times was it 3 times or was it like 10 times? It was a lot. The point is she severely underpaid Jackie. And I get that they're doing that to kind of build Zhang up and show how like badass she is, because we already knew Jackie was badass, and then Zhang just totally, outwitted her. And so Zhang must be real badass. But like, Zhang didn't really outwit her. Jackie was just momentarily stupid, where she literally had 0 idea how much this indigo that she had was worth. Like she knew it was obviously she knew it was very expensive, because she was like keeping it closely guarded and all that, but like apparently had no idea how much it was really worth, because Zhang was able to underpay her by a significant amount, despite this being at a time when Jackie was pissed off and should have been overcharging, if anything. So if Zhang just like, oh yeah, it's easily worth that much and more, it still gets across the same message without making Jackie look so stupid because she was so underpaid, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I charged her, $100 for something that was worth like $300. It's like, I charged her for $100 and it's actually would have been worth like $120. right? So something like that. Like Zhang doesn't have to be super motivated like to like make this a great deal, because Zhang's actually mostly motivated because she's a crush on Olu, so it's fine. Anyways, back on to Zhang character arc. So we have that whole interaction where we're like, ooh, she's so badass, and then we have like her on the ship and like the way that she's like, you know, faking nice. She's very bread and circuses. Like the whole, yeah, we do our exercise routine every morning and whatever, and like it's all so great and happy. But also you are gonna have to drag ships across Panama by hand if I tell you to. Like waking everyone up with that fucking bell in the morning. So yeah. And then she has like her whole thing where she meets up with Captain Bartholomew, I think was his name, and is like kind of weaponizes his misogyny, his racism, whatever, to kind of get under your skin, but like tricks him into agreeing to be a part of her like her fleet, right? Like he's gonna join with her. And so she is up to something. And we even get later in this episode, it kind of leads up to where when Steed is like trying to convince her not to execute the crew who committed mutiny, which, like a side note, that is kind of weird that for just this one episode, mutiny is like a death sentence, even though we were just casually talking about it all the time in the previous season. And I feel like there's even like some casual mentions of it after this episode, but that's just a nitpick. I'm not worried about that really, but it is kind of weird. So anyways, so while he's trying to convince her, you know, don't kill them, and she's like, well, you know, I am feeling kind of merciful, and like clearly she was leading into like, maybe I won't kill them, and maybe you just take your crew, except for Olu, and you take your ship and you join my fleet. Like, I feel like that's what we were going for, right? That's what we were building to. And we got interrupted when we found out that what Ed was theoretically for real dead. But yeah, so clearly girl is up to something, right? So building her up is like this like big bad antagonist, and then that just sort of fizzles out. You know, we see her meet up with Ricky again later, and like we find out that her plan is we are going to, you know, make the basically universal basic income for pirates. Her plan is pay us all a living wage, and we won't pirate you anymore, which like in theory is like some mob protection stuff, but also it's against the British Empire, so like I ain't too worried about it. I ain't too fussed about it. And so like it kind of puts you in a situation where you're like, she's shaking down Ricky for money, but it's not like we like Ricky, so is she a bad guy? And like nothing she's doing is like a threat to piracy. It's not like she, or like Steed or anything, it's not like she's making this deal with Ricky and Ricky's like, okay, deal, but also I'm fucking pissed at Steed because he got my nose chopped off, so I will do that if you get him for me. Or he's not like, or she's not like making the deal and like swinging the pot, like, and also we will, you know, hunt down any of the pirates who aren't on our crew, so like basically privateering at that point. And or anything like that, right? So it's kind of unclear. And then after that, it just seems like she's like a friend, maybe, like, you know, Olu's gonna join her crew, and like Olu's great. We love Olu, so if he's pro Zhang, then I guess she's all right. And like, I don't know. We really built up to this big threat, and then her entire fleet just gets exploded. The end. So I don't like that. So our two options here to go with her are to either like actually pay off the threat, Or the other option is to just like not build her up as a threat in the first place. Like, we can still get the vibe that, like, you know, we don't love all of her methods, but not like idea of like building her up into the big bad. And so we're going with the latter option because the former option would require a lot more reworking of the finale. And this is supposed to be just a minimal change thing. So that's when we cut the ships being pulled across Panama, because obviously that was a big, like, oh God, what is she up to? So nothing. She's up to nothing. So let's get rid of it. Those ships amounted to nothing. They just got blown up. It was dumb. So we'll cut that. And like kind of just have this sort of thing where she is like, doesn't hate Steed. Like, we definitely get this vibe that she hates Steed for a lot of it. And I just want to kind of cut that. Because again, this time she's going to be a friend. Like, she can be like a little low-key annoyed with him at first, but also have her be like, appreciate that he maybe kind of sees her way about things a little bit. Like, her approach to it is not as genuine as his. Like, she's using it more as a manipulation tactic, and he like seriously means it. But you know, she kind of appreciates that he appreciates that. So like, have her, you know, she wins Captain Bartholomew over, and then Steed is like, oh my God, that was so cool how you did that. And, you know, I'm always saying that, you know, we should all just talk. You know, why do we have to be violent? You know, why does it even have to be like that? Why? And what if it weren't like that? And she's like, well, now, hold on now. I'm not like against violence. It's just, you know, I'm just kind of telling him what he wants to hear kind of deal, right? And, you know, Steed's like all about honest communication, and she's like, no, we're not being honest with people. We're just telling them what they need to hear to be on our team. And he's like, what's our team, you mean? And she's like, well, you know what? I think you will appreciate this. So let me share this with you. And she's like, okay, so my plan, and she just tells him the plan, not with Ricky. Like, my plan is we are going to build up this big old fleet, and then we are going to make the British Empire and go ahead and throw the Spanish and the French, and, you know, we're going to make them all pay us not to pirate, right? And so she kind of shares that with him. So we just know that Zhang is our friend, and like, we like that. That sounds like a cool idea, you know, because we all like all the pirates that we know we like. So yeah, just have her tell him right out in this initial conversation, that is my plan. That's what I want to do. So that way we are rooting for the plan. So then when Ricky blows all her ships up, it's not like oh, I guess that threat just nothing came of it. It's more of a like, oh no, we were rooting for that and then it didn't happen. So we can be sad about it. Like, we know to be sad about it because this is the thing that we liked and we were rooting for. And Steve and Olu were there, and they heard about it, and they were also rooting for it. Like, they liked that. That seems like a good idea. So that's how we changed that. And then we can still keep, though, the idea of, you know, they meet up with the Revenge, and there was like the mutiny, and like, oh my God, is she gonna kill them because of that? Like, so that can still be a point of like tension for them, and it can be a reason for them to have to get away from Zhang for a while. Just because that works, like the idea that she's like very hard line about something like that. Like, she's like, you have to have the respect of your crew, or else things will go to chaos. And, you know, if they mutiny in their captain, then clearly they don't respect their captain, so I kill him. That's it. That's the rules. That's how we do it. And of course, it's not like that. So that works. Then the other thing that I kind of want to change is related to Olu and Jim in this one, where when they reunite in this one, their reunion, that's what I was looking for. So their reunion in this one, it just feels a little awkward to me. Like, they're excited to see each other, and then it's kind of like an awkward moment where Jim like confesses to have kissed someone else, and Olu's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, like he's clearly trying to be supportive, but also he feels weird about it. It feels like their relationship's kind of in a weird place. And ultimately, I think we just don't get enough later on. Like, I'm fine with it being in a weird place, and then them kind of later talking more, and they ultimately decide to do like a poly thing with Archie, and I guess Zhang too later, whatever. But when this conversation is just too awkward, so it doesn't feel like they were like open relationship types or whatever. So if we don't have time to develop it later, which we don't, and that's fine, that wasn't their fault. I think we just have to skip it ever feeling awkward. Let's just have, they reunite, and then maybe they even kiss, and then Jim's like, by the way, I kissed someone else, and Olu's like, yeah, really, who? And she's like, Archie, and he's like, oh, really? Archie's hot, cool. And then later, when Olu kissed Zhang, and then he has to leave, or I guess Zhang kind of kisses Olu. Honestly, just like as a side note, I don't super buy Olu being into Zhang. Zhang's crush on Olu is very cute, but I just don't get a lot from Olu that he is into Zhang. He seems to respect her a lot, as a pirate captain, and I think he likes her as a friend, maybe, but I don't get the sense that he's into her. That might be more of a directing thing. I know it's not acting, because obviously the Olu Jim thing was super cute first season, so we know the boy can act. I don't know, but I just don't quite buy it, but I don't have any specific changes that I would suggest to fix that. Just, let's look into that maybe. But anyway, so when Zhang kisses Olu, then she gets interrupted by the bell, and Jim comes and is like, let's go. Having Olu hesitate for a second. He's like, oh my god, I just kissed Zhang, and give Jim a moment to pause, where they look, at the hallway where Zhang just ran off, and they're like, nice. Okay, we gotta go though. Let's go. So just kind of having them both be very accepting and oh, that's super cool that you kissed this other person. They're hot. To just we don't have to make a deal about the fact that they're poly. Just we never had to make a big deal about the fact that Jim was non-binary. We don't have to make a big deal of it. I just want it to feel like this was already a thing that's already always been a thing. We don't need to talk about it. It just is. Because as it stands with the kind of awkward conversation, it feels like they set up something and it didn't go anywhere, and we just forgot about it. So, anyways, that is episode 3. Moving on now to episode 4, Fun and Games. This is where we're going to start to get a little bit into it. Really, the next episode when we really get into it. But here's where we start to get to more stuff that I just don't feel works as well. Those first 3 episodes those were the short ones. So episode 4. So starting with that whole opening conversation between a conversation about Ed between Steed and the crew, where Steed is like, we should keep him on board, and the crew's like, no, we gotta get rid of him. I want to shift the tone a little bit, the exact trajectory of that conversation. First of all, by the way, Izzy will be there during this. He's not participating, because he's not a participator, but he's in the room. He is sitting off on the side by himself. He is doing something. He's working on something, whatever. We don't know. He doesn't want to be involved in this discussion. He's just here because he has to be. But he's not going to be off drunk. We're cutting that whole thing out. It was weird to me. The way that it was done, it felt like we were using a lot of the shorthands for bitter old drunk who is sad about his life, bitter old alcoholic almost, that is sad about his life, which doesn't work. I think maybe the idea was less alcoholic and more he had a bad turn, his leg was amputated and he just doesn't know what's going on now, and how he's gonna cope with that, especially with how things with Ed have gone to shit. And I think maybe it was just him just temporarily trying to drink to cope rather than abruptly turn to alcoholic. But I don't know, something about the vibe to it felt very like they were trying to do alcoholic to me, which I did not like. Especially because, like, okay, so he's drunk in this episode, then they drop it in the next episode. Okay, so fine, maybe he was just a drunk. But then in the next episode, like, Ed walks up to him at one point, and Izzy is, like, morning, not even day drinking. He's, like, first thing in the morning drinking. We're watching the sun come up, and he is drunk already. So drunk he thinks that Ed was Roach. So, like, but then it goes away again and never comes back, which is weird. It feels like maybe they were going to have a subplot about him being alcoholic, and then they decided not to go that route, and they just didn't finish cutting it all out. It was weird. So we're just not going to do that for this one. Instead, he is there. He's not participating, but he is here, possibly against his will, but he is here. Anyway, so they're having a conversation, and like we have, and I want to maybe feel like it feels a little bit more divisive between the crew, a little bit more like, you know, definitely the people that were on Ed's crew, and as well as Lucius, are very pro kick him off the ship, but maybe have some of the people who are more on like Steed's side of the crew are like, well, you know, he's our friend Ed, like, because they weren't subjected to all this, like they never had to go through any of that. Like the first thing they saw of him, like the last they saw of him was him saying, let's do a talent show, you guys. And then Izzy's the one who ditched him on the island. And then the next time they saw him, he was dead. And then it turned out he wasn't dead, but his brain is kind of maybe couscous. So like they should be feeling bad for him. Like, no, we can't kick him off the ship. Like, look, he's in really bad shape, and he's our friend. It's a little bit more back and forth rather than everyone against Steed. So as like we're discussing it, and like the people are like, we gotta kick him off, get rid of him. And Steed's like, well, you know, we've all done things, and you know, like no. And he's like, well, you know, what about Izzy over here doing whatever? You know, he sold us out to the English, and we're letting him stay on the ship. And they're like, yeah, but we're not scared of Izzy. Like, what is he gonna do? Is he gonna call the British on us again? Like, let's see you try while we have you stuck on the ship with us. Something like that, right? They're not scared of Izzy, and that's why they're not trying to kick him off the ship. They're more scared of him off the ship because he could go run into Prince Ricky. And then Steve could go like, okay, great, let's go with that. What can we do to make you not scared of Ed? And then like a bunch of fighting from there. And just kind of changing that in that direction. Partially, again, I want it to be a little bit more of a like argument between the two groups, because eventually at the end of the episode, Ed's going to be brought back to the ship, and I want to feel a bit more like realistic. So if the two groups are fighting over it, then it feels more realistic at the end of the episode if we have now come to the decision, okay, he can stay, but he has to wear the cat collar. That feels more realistic than with the way it is. It feels like everyone was very much on board, everyone but Steed, obviously, was very much on board with exile him, and they agree to exile him, and then all of a sudden Steed has a conversation with them off screen, and everyone's like, okay, I guess he can stay now. It doesn't really work. So more divisive. And then also, the reason I'm doing that whole thing with like, we're not scared of Izzy, but we're scared of Ed, helps kind of frame this in a better way, because like, again, Izzy does a lot of shit to them too in the first season, and Izzy was doing it out of a place of like just being very sure that he's right, like a very toxic masculinity kind of place, and that's not necessarily a person that deserves a lot of sympathy and understanding, or a special amount of sympathy and understanding for his actions. Like, if he wants to grow and change, then I love that for him, and I want him to see support in doing that, but he's not someone that his victims should like feel compelled to be like, well, you know, he was going through it. He was not going through it. Whereas Ed is their friend who also did like horrible shit to them, or at least he only did horrible shit to the portion of the crew that were like still with him. Like another portion of the crew never had to deal with any of that. But he was like coming from a place of very, very deep pain. And so like it's something where he does need, I would expect more of that love and support and like, you know, helping him get through it. And yet in the episode as it stands, Izzy gets all the love and support and he's our new unicorn. And whereas Ed is like, kick him to the curb. And I don't like that. So reframing it on the question of them feeling safe is like, okay, I believe that they feel scared of Ed and they don't feel scared of Izzy. And then that is a valid reason to not want Ed around. Like, they don't want him around not because they're not willing to give like forgiveness or whatever, but because they don't feel safe. And they as victims have the right to feel safe in their own home. So I think it works better that way. So then we get to, you know, the argument and then we cut. And now instead of like everyone throwing him off, like this is the official exile perp walk, we're having Steed, like, I think Steed can be walking him and then everyone else is like on the far side of the ship, like, don't get too close to me. I don't want to get near him. I'm scared. And Steed is kind of walking Ed off the ship and like explaining to him like, hey, they just want you to go to the beach, like hang out there. It's just temporarily, you know, we're just talking it through. We're, you know, figuring out how can we feel safe, making sure everyone can feel safe. And while they're having that discussion, what would make them feel safe is if you were on the ship for a little while. We can still have Steed, you know, he's like walking to Ed to the little robot boat, the dinghy, and still have Steve be like, well, say something. And Ed's like, or you could also have the sandwich, like, don't you want your sandwich? Like, we packed you a snack for while you're waiting on the beach, and he doesn't want the sandwich. And Steve's like, well, say something. And then Ed's like, you're not a mermaid. And Steve's like, what does that mean? Like, you can still have that whole moment, that works. Just the difference, of course, because it is temporary, that makes it easier. Again, makes it easier to buy at the end of the episode when Ed does come back to the ship. Because we were never actually fully exiling it, so we never had to fully change our minds. And then also that helps explain why Steve doesn't go with him. If this is just supposed to be, if this was exile, then why isn't Steve like, okay, if y'all are exiling Ed, the man that I, you know, left my wife again for, and am now been searching for months with a single-minded focus, but I guess y'all are exiling him, so bye, Ed. Like, what? No, I don't buy that. But if it is supposed to just be like, hey, we just want you to sit on the beach for a little while, then it makes sense that Steve would like, even though he's maybe worried about Ed and Ed's condition, because his brain is maybe couscous, it makes sense that Steve might think, but my priority needs to be staying with everyone on the ship to argue Ed's case, to defend him, to make sure that he can come back with whatever restrictions that we need. But then, you know, Ed rows the ship and rows the boat to the beach. I guess it wasn't really a beach. It was kind of like a marshy area, whatever, to land. And so Steed is watching him go and he's like, oof, that's not good. And where is he? Now he's just like wandering off, like Steed's worried. You know, like he does not look like he's in good condition. He does not look like he's okay. So then Buttons comes up and he's like, yeah, I gotta go to town to find myself something. Steed is gonna make that as an excuse, like, let me come with you. I need to go check on Ed. Like the idea, like his priorities have now shifted. His first priority was, you know, I need to stay on the ship and argue Ed's case, but now he's like, I think Ed may be in immediate physical, like, trouble, danger, like, he does not look well. I need to go to the beach and make sure he is settled and gonna be okay, and then I can come back and argue his case, right? Like, that makes sense, that his priorities would shift like that, and so there we go. Sticking with the crew on the ship and like that arc of the story, like, I think maybe we can kind of keep a similar vibe in terms of like they're like clashing throughout, but I think I would want more of the clashing to be focused still on this idea of them trying to talk out, should Ed even be allowed to stay? If he's going to stay, what do we need to do? How are we going to handle it? Like, continuing that argument again, so we can build towards this idea of, by the end of the episode, we have seen them come to a place where we can believe that when Steve shows back up with Ed at the end, they're like, yeah, he can stay. So let's have them have those arguments, and it can get heated, and it can even move past the idea of what's going on with Ed at times. But anyway, so having these arguments, Izzy is still here, still like in the background a lot. He's up to something. We don't know. He's doing something. He's, again, not participating, but he's there. And then finally, like in our end argument, we're all down in the hole again, and we're all, shouting at each other. We're all angry. And then finally someone, I feel like maybe, I don't know, maybe Jim, maybe Lucius, one of them, like one of the people who are team Ed's gotta go, goes like, why don't we ask Izzy? What does Izzy think? Because Ed blew off Izzy's leg, so maybe his opinion matters. And then Izzy, like, finally, this is the first time he's spoken the whole episode. Like, probably when, Steve was like, we're not scared of Izzy, huh? He might give him a mean look, but I like the idea if he doesn't speak the whole rest of the episode to right here at the end, he's sitting here, and the thing that he has been working on, we finally see this whole time, he has been making himself a better prosthetic leg, right? So it's a metaphor for, while they were all arguing, Izzy was kind of spending this time in himself and healing, and he made himself a prosthetic leg. And as he's been spending this time with himself and healing, he is able to, when they all turn to him like, well, what do you think? And he's like, you know what? I think y'all do what the fuck you want. I don't care. But, maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to phrase this exactly. I spent a lot of time on this, but I haven't figured out how exactly I want to phrase this line. But something where he implies, without totally outright saying it, that maybe y'all should listen to Steve, because it seems like he knows what he's talking about when it comes to Ed. Kind of calling back, like, we're building this redemption for him. And so in the previous episode, right, where Steve and Izzy had that whole conversation in the captain's quarters, where there are like a number of moments where Steve really shows like a great insight into Ed and where he's coming from and his feelings, and like he shows that he really understands Ed really well in a way that seems to take Izzy maybe kind of off guard. Like, a lot of this it's very subtle, but it seems like Izzy is maybe didn't realize, wasn't expecting that Steve like really does understand Ed. And he's like, Izzy's kind of having to come to terms with that. And that Steve understood what Ed was going through in this whole like Kraken era better than Izzy did, despite the fact that Steve has only ever had a vague notion of what was going on from a far distance, and Izzy was right there in it. And yet Steve understood it better. So this is kind of reinforcing that same idea. Like, we're building this arc for him where Izzy is kind of starting to realize, oh fuck, maybe I don't know everything and what is best for everyone. And so that's where he is at the end of this one. He's just like, I don't know, it's not my business. Y'all can decide what y'all want to do. He's not bossing people around anymore. That's great for him. He's also probably not saying y'all. You can decide what you want to do. But, y'all all love Steve so much, maybe just listen to him. Whatever. I don't know. I don't care. I'm out. So, like, and that kind of builds us into his arc in the next episode as well. So, he says that, and honestly, I feel like we can just even end it there. Like, we don't need to see the crew actually decide, okay, fine, we're going to let him come back. if we have seen them arguing back and forth, and we see it end with Izzy implicitly suggesting, yes, you should be allowed to come back, then the next episode where we see, Steve there with Ed in his little penance onesie, which we can maybe explain. We've all agreed that Ed cannot be wearing, any weapons or his scary clothing, and he has to wear this little bell collar so he can't sneak up on anyone. That was Pete's idea. Presumably that was also Pete's little bell collar. I'm sure he and Lucius have a lot of fun together. So then we can see, okay, great. So in the previous episode, they were arguing about should he be allowed to stay, and like the kind of crux of it was like, if he's allowed to stay, how can we feel safe? And then we leave it as, Izzy's kind of implying you should let him stay. And then the next episode, we see him all done up in a way that is supposed to make them all feel safe and comfortable. Like, okay, yeah. I don't necessarily need to see every step from A to B. I can follow that. Fair enough. Okay, so switching back to Steve and Ed and the dinner party from hell. So obviously, Steve is walking with Buttons, and he's kind of looking around for Ed, but like he doesn't know where Ed's wandered off to. And then he gets distracted momentarily by this antique store, which fortunately Ed also runs into the antique store. But you can still have Steve kind of try to play off like, I wasn't looking for you. Like when Ed is upset to see Steve, he's like, well, no, it was totally coincidence. I definitely wasn't here looking for you and making sure you were okay. And then the conversation, obviously we need to change it a little bit, because the conversation that they have here is based on the assumption that Ed has been exiled. So I would say have, when Ed and Steve introducing how they know each other to Mary and Anne, Steve can be like, oh, we're shipmates, and Ed can be like, you mean former shipmates? And Steve's like, well, hey, that's not been decided yet. And Ed's like, well, maybe not by you, kind of implying that he has already decided to leave, right? And then that's when Anne and Mary jump in like, ooh, you guys should stay for dinner. Like, they are loving the drama. And Steve's like, no, well, I kind of got to get back to the ship. Which, again, in this context, Steve needs to get back to the ship, because he's like, oh man, I need to get back and make sure, I need to argue for Ed being able to come back. And Ed can be like, yeah, no, I'd love to stay for dinner, and maybe I can stay a couple days, hang out. And then that's when Steve's like, shit, okay. And he's like, wait, no, I will stay for dinner too, because he's now realizing like, oh, I might need to convince Ed to come back to the ship at all. So it doesn't, it's not going to help if I can convince the crew to let him back if Ed won't come back. So that's why Steve changes his mind there, right? So just kind of, that's how that conversation would play out to work with the new context. Okay. Then moving forward, we have Ed and Mary are having that conversation outside where Ed makes mention about how Steve stabbed him once. And then we get a flashback to when that happened in the first season. We're going to cut that flashback. And we're going to cut, I'm not going to mention everyone, because there are so many flashbacks in this season. So many flashbacks. I liked the first season too, guys. But I'm here to watch the second season. And then they have a bunch of flashbacks to stuff that happened earlier in this same season, and I'm not that dumb. I know it's been a couple episodes since we've seen Ricky, but I do remember Ricky, and I remember he got his nose cut off, and I can see that he's got the prosthetic nose. You don't have to explain everything to me. There's so many flashbacks, you guys, just so many, and we're gonna cut most of them, and I'm not gonna mention them all, but the point is, cut the majority of them, except for the ones that are in, moments where we're supposed to have very high emotional intensity from the characters. Like the merman scene. Merman scene gets to have as many flashbacks as it wants. The merman scene is my favorite child and can have everything that it wants. But most of the other scenes don't get flashbacks. flashbacks. They don't need them. It's weird how much they flashback. Okay, so, hi Katie, I love you too. So, we're gonna change the whole interaction between Ed and Steed, in the, after the failed dinner party, where, Ed is on the sofa. Primarily, I want to change the whole, like, whim-prone thing. Hi, baby. I don't like it. They are not whim-prone. And it's weird that the show validates this. Like, they're not. It wasn't a whim. God, I'm trying to remember how I wanted that conversation to play out. So, basically... we might have to pause it for a minute while I go rewatch that conversation. Yeah, hold on guys, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, I remember. So we go ahead and keep, the part with Ed saying that, I was just whim to you, blah, blah, blah. And then Steve's like, well, I was whim to you because you were gonna burn my face off. Ooh, excuse me. And that's all good. But then when Steve like kind of sighs and goes to move to the couch, have him clarify for Ed, you weren't a whim to me. None of it was a whim. It might seem that way from the outside. Like sometimes I just make big decisions and it seems like it's happening all of a sudden, but really I think about things a lot for a long time in my head before I do them. And we were moving so fast. And then Ed's like, well, I was all in. He's like, I panicked. Okay, great. Something along those lines. Definitely want to set up this idea that Steve, thinks about things in his head a long time, needs time to think about decisions before he can commit to them. Because we're gonna build into that for the rest of the season. Then another little change that I want is towards the end of this conversation, where Steve's like, well, I love your chin, I love everything about you, love breathing the same air as you, it's nice, feels good. And then Ed turns to him, and then Ed and Mary interrupt by laughing. I just want an extra beat there. Ed turns to him and we see he's about to say something, he's almost gonna say it, and then Anne and Mary laugh. I've seen a lot of people who think Anne and Mary's opinion on this, their laughter and calling them so earnest or whatever, thinking that that's the response that they're supposed to have, that's how we're supposed to walk away feeling about this. So I think adding a little bit extra beat, adding, Ed really maybe even start to say something before they interrupt, just to really build up that extra degree of frustration that they cut him off. Just because they're not right. You're not supposed to agree with them. This is supposed to show that they are, they're the immature ones here, right? That they can't just be honest about emotions. So I think just adding a little extra frustration might help sell that better to the audience. And then, of course, at the very end, when Steve and Ed are having the conversation, obviously it's not going to be Steve's like, well, let me see if I'll let you stay for just one more night as a special dispensation. Steve's like, well, they might have even talked it out by now. Let me go check. So it's not a special, can we get them to agree? It's just let me go check on them, and maybe before that he can ask if Ed does want to come back, since Ed had kind of given the vibe that maybe I don't want to come back. And so he's like, well, do you? And Ed's like, yeah, I do. So he's like, great, let me go check in with them. And then he runs off and then comes back. That's episode 4. Moving on to episode 5. And now this is when we're really getting into it. This is this one's multiple pages in my notebook here, you guys. Not a huge fan of episode 5. We'll get into it. Okay, so first thing, kind of diving into it. The first like apology thing, that's fine. I already said, we've already kind of built up to it a little better in the previous episode. But yeah, so Ed is giving his apology, whatever, and then we have, I'm gonna skip to Ed and Steed having their little conversation after that. And so we got a couple of different plot lines that happen here in this story, and so I'm just gonna kind of go plot line by plot line and focus on, like, which I've been doing before, right? But even more so. Let's start with just Ed's plot line. So we may have to come back and recover some of the scenes that cross as the plot lines cross. So starting with Ed's plot line here, we still have that, he's having that conversation with Steed where he's like antsy, like, you know, what he's antsy about, like, you know, what do I do next? And kind of like what can I do to fix this? Like, I want to fix this. He wants to get out of his onesie. He wants to get out of the cat collar. I know we all love Catboy Ed, but I don't think Ed loves Catboy Ed. He wants out of the collar. It's uncomfortable. He wants out of this stupid onesie. It's scratchy. He doesn't like it. And like Nancy, like, how can I do this? But also kind of get the vibe of like, I want to do this. I want to make things right. I want to get it like back. I want to get things good with everyone. Let's go. What do I do? And so he's gonna go fix that door latch. And then he's fixed the door latch, and he's like telling her, like, oh, look, I fixed it. Like, what can I do to help you? And like, I think I want to see him say that to like one or two people before he talks to Lucius. Like, because that's going to tie into a different plot line. So, but we'll just have him see that, and then, so then he offers to help Lucius, and Lucius is like, no. But then we have the whole, oh, what? No, you can't, that's not a toy. That's not a toy. And like, we have that whole interaction. And then, oh, hi, yeah, hi. Then he ends up going fishing with Fang, and, like, they're having that talk about, hi, yeah, you're a good boy, huh? So, talking to Fang, you know, what can I do to, you know, I want to make this better. I want to make things up to people. I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. Like, I don't know how to get them to, you know, how to make things up to them. And then Fang can be like, okay, well, I beat the shit out of your body when you're unconscious. And Ed's like, okay, let's go. I'm going to let everyone beat the shit out of me, and that's going to fix it. And Fang's like, no, actually, that didn't help. What it was is me beating your body. It just made me feel bad about myself. It made me feel worse. And that helped me to realize, like, where you were coming from. That if you were hurting us all that bad, you must have been hurting really, really bad. And so that kind of removes this whole thing, like this retributive justice thing that kind of happens in this episode that I don't like. This sort of idea that, well, you know, Ed hurt Fang a lot, but then Fang beat Ed up, and now he feels better about it, right? Like, you get your revenge, and then that fixes it. So, I don't like that vibe. Not about that. So having Fang, like, explicitly say, no, beating you up just made me feel bad about myself, makes it clear that we're not about that. That's not what we're here for. And also, it kind of works well with, you know, where we see Lucius push Ed off the ship. And for a moment, he did seem like he felt better, but like, immediately, he was just like, oh, now he just feels shitty. So kind of emphasizes that, like, that, you know, getting revenge, it didn't actually help. Right? And so Fang's advice, instead of telling Ed to shut up, which is like, it's not really been Ed's problem. Like, he's not, in this one episode, he's like a motor mouth chatterbox, but like prior episodes, that's not like been a problem of his, that he just like talks all the time. He can't sit quietly. He sat quietly real well in his room with his little dollies. Like, he's really good about sitting with himself and his thoughts. Don't knock that over, Katie. Okay, you good? So instead, Fang's thing is gonna be like, can I make an observation? I feel like Blackbeard, you know, he always has a plan. He always has a plan, and he executes the plan, and he gets what he wants. And I'm wondering if maybe that's the problem. This is not something where you can just have a plan and execute the plan. Sometimes you just have to be patient and let people, you know, figure it out for themselves. And so that ties into, you know, that can kind of tie into the fishing pretty well, right? The idea of needing to be patient. And it also can kind of tie into what happened with the last episode, right? Where Ed and Stede had this conversation where Stede felt like I was being rushed. I needed time to think about that on my own before I was willing to run off to China. And Ed was like, he had the plan. Let's go to China. Let's execute the plan. And that didn't work, because sometimes you gotta let people come to things on their own. So great. And then that does mean that in the in-conversation that Ed has with Stede, we're gonna remove that, like, where he's like, I think we should take it slow because we're both wind prone, because we removed that from the last episode. But we can still tie it into like, oh, I think we should take it slow. Like, let's build it in our own time. There's no rush, kind of thing. Okay, so Lucius, his plotline. We have the whole apology, and then we have Lucius afterwards. He's like freaking out, like that was not a good apology. And then like that's all fine. But then like Izzy comes up to him and like takes this like cigarette out of his mouth and does a puff, and then like tries to put it back in his mouth, and Lucy's like freaks out and like flinches away. And I think we're supposed to laugh at that. Like, we're supposed to laugh about Lucius having a trauma response about someone getting up in his space that he does not want in his space. Like, that's not funny. Why am I laughing at Lucius's trauma? Like, no. Just, and it's mean. Like, Izzy's not being a cool guy. He's being an asshole. That's not cool. This, like, Lucius is really upset. So, yeah, just cut all that. Like, we can have Lucy's, like, he's really upset and he's really freaking out about this, and everyone else like, it was fine. I thought the apology was fine. I'm okay with it. Whatever. But Lucius is, like, freaking out. And then we have the whole thing where Lucius is pushes Ed off, and that overboard, and that doesn't help. And then he's trying to, like, draw Pete, and he's not focusing. And Pete comes and looks at the, hi, baby, yeah. He comes and looks at the notebook, and, you know, Lucius is like, oh, you don't get it, da-da-da, and have, hi, baby, stop it, please. Then have Pete, like, finally just, like, you know, Ed didn't kill Pepper. Y'all remember Pepper? Y'all remember the little dog, right? That Lucius had to eat? It was his friend. Then they ate him. And then Lucius had to catch the rats with his teeth. So yeah, there was a dog. In the notebook, he had drawn a little dog with Ed's face on it. And so Pete sees that, and he's like, hey, Ed didn't kill Pepper, right? Which kind of, first of all, it expresses to us that Pete has definitely been listening. Like, obviously Lucius and Pete have circled back, and they have continued to have conversations, and Pete has been listening, like, and he cares, right? Obviously, immediately he sees that dog with Ed's face, and he identifies this as, oh, this is Lucy's trauma about Pepper, right? So it proves that Pete has been a supportive partner off screen when we haven't seen it. So I get it. We didn't have time to actually show those conversations happening. It's not their fault. The runtime was so short. So that helps us kind of know that, okay, yeah, these conversations have been happening. And then from there, have Pete kind of be like, okay, yeah, he didn't kill Pepper, and like, just like, I understand that he did some, he pushed you out overboard, and that wasn't okay. And like, you don't have to forgive him. But I feel like you are blaming him for everything that happened to you, and that's not his fault. And it doesn't seem like it's helping you to heal to blame him. So, maybe not. And just like have that be where we leave the conversation when Pete walks out. Because I don't like the existing conversation. Like, I see what they're trying to do, and it is a thing that can happen where someone gets like so fixated on like their own problems and their own trauma that they're not trying to heal from it, and that they are also being really dismissive of like the needs of the people around them. Like, he's not being there to support Pete because he's so focused on his own trauma. Like, I get that is a thing that can happen, but the reality of it is we have not actually seen Pete supporting Lucius at all throughout this entire, few episodes that this has been going on. Because in episode 2, this is all season 2. Episode 2, we got a mention of it happening off screen, but even then, it was a mention of it that then it got cut short because Pete couldn't do it. And then episode 3, Lucy seemed like he was fine. Episode 4, there was like, in the rewritten version, we kind of aren't going to see that, but I'm not holding that against them because that's my version. They don't know what's going on in my head. But in episode 4, in the canon, like, yeah, Pete and the group are trying to do something nice, but like, first of all, it doesn't go well, so it's kind of it doesn't help. But it's also again not listening to the trauma. It's just like trying to throw a party to help them feel better. And it's also not Pete doing this for Lucius. It's this group doing a group thing for the group that has trauma, right? It's not Pete being a supportive boyfriend. And of course, it all devolves into fighting, so like, it really doesn't go well. So yeah, we don't ever actually see Pete directly supporting Lucius at any point about any of his trauma. So to have him now finally, like, he's finally snapping that he's been there and he's been supportive, and like, he's finally just had enough, like, because Lucius has just not been trying to improve and he's not been there for Pete. Like, we never saw any of that. So instead of Pete's like being understandable frustration that's been building up for a long time, it looks like Pete is just like, oh man, it's been a day since, you finally had to confront the person who traumatized you again, and you're not all over it already. Like, have you even thought about how your trauma affects me? Like, no, it's shitty. I hate it. It's not, in theory, there was something that maybe could have been done there, but it doesn't work in this context. So changing it instead, like I said, we have Pete showing with the comment about Pepper that he was, they have been having these talks. He has been paying attention. He does know what Lucius is going through. And then he is having this sort of conversation with the focus on helping Lucius with his trauma, right? He's not like, have you thought about how your trauma affects me? He's like, hey, the way you're handling your trauma, like, I don't know that that's helpful for you, right? And it's not even about, well, it's not fair to blame Ed for things that he didn't do. It's about, I feel like this is not helping you to heal. It's not helping you move forward. So that just works better. And then also it kind of ties in better. In episode 2, Lucius was really pissed off at Steed initially because he blamed Steed because Steed dumped Ed, and then Ed pushed Lucius overboard because Lucius doesn't know about the role Izzy played and all that. So he says, okay, it's Steed's fault that Ed was upset, and because Ed was upset, he pushed me overboard. Therefore, it is Steed, and because Ed pushed me overboard, all this other shit happened to me. Therefore, all this other shit that happened to me is Steed's fault. And it's not. Like, that's not Steed's fault. Steed has no control over what... Steed didn't eat Pepper either. Steed didn't kill Pepper. And he's also not the one who pushed Lucius overboard. You know, that was Ed's fault. And so we see in that episode, like, Lucius seems to come to terms with that, right? He makes up with Steed. But it makes sense then that we come back to that in this episode where, yeah, okay, he's recognized that it's not Steed's fault that Ed pushed him overboard, but he still has to accept, just because Ed's pushed him overboard, that doesn't mean all this other shit that happened to him was Ed's fault. Like, any of the trauma from being pushed overboard, from being, like, in the ocean and it's dark, and he's, like, lost and he's not sure if he's going to survive, sure, that's all Ed's fault. But Ed didn't kill Pepper. And so that, you know, that works better. And then we're going to cut out the whole thing with Izzy where he's, like, telling, you know, Lucius, like, you got to get over it because not is worse or whatever. Like, oh, I hate that whole thing. First of all, I hate that he's whittling. That was Pete's thing. Why does Izzy have to steal everyone else's thing, okay? Izzy has to he has to be a whittler now, and also he has to do drag. That's Lee John's thing, but Izzy does it too now. And also, Izzy makes that little quippy Pinocchio remark. Pinocchio is Steve's thing. Like, stop stealing everyone's things, Izzy. Find your own thing. So I don't like that. I don't like that he was whittling. Such a petty complaint, but I don't like it. But also, it's like really bad advice. Like, he frames it as, you know, he's like, either you can make up bullshit stories to pretend like your trauma didn't happen and ignore it, or you cannot get over it. It's like nice false dichotomy, idiot, what lies outside it, right? Like, no, you have other options that include actually healing from your trauma. So it's bad advice, but it's like treated like it's good advice. Like, this is like profound wisdom that it's not. And also, Izzy, as the character, has not yet earned the right to be the profound wisdom giver. Like, we're still working on this arc. He's not there yet. And this is like not even, like, where did he learn this wisdom? Oh, actually, no, I do believe that Izzy thinks the correct thing is suppressing it. Like, that's, to be fair, that is advice I believe that Izzy would give. It's just not a good advice. Okay. So the actual last piece in Lucius's arc, we'll circle back to it in a minute because we're going to jump over to Steed's arc now, right? So Steed's arc, that same conversation at the beginning, him and Ed, where Ed, as we already said, is still antsy about what can I do to make it better, whatever. So Steed now is going to express that, like, maybe he doesn't really feel like a captain since he's got back, but it's not going to be about the captain voice and he needing to be more mean. It's about, like he just doesn't feel like things are back to normal, right? Like, he was hoping once he got back to the ship and, you know, got back with the crew and got back to Ed, like, things could go back to normal the way they were, and, like, they haven't, and just, like, he's not feeling that yet. And so, you know, that's where he's at, right? And so, because of this change, we're cutting out the whole training arc thing that happened in this episode for a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, there's a lot in this episode, right? Ed has a story arc, Lucius has a story arc, then there's the cursed suit story arc, and there's the Steed training arc. Like, it's a lot of plot lines. It's too much, I think. It's too many, especially in the original version of the episode, there's, like, not very much overlap between any of those plot lines, right? So it's a lot. So we're going to cut the training arc plot line for that reason, and also because Izzy's not there yet. We're not at the point where Izzy should be giving Steed training. Like, why would Steed... Okay, well, I believe that Steed would go to Izzy for mean voice training. That is something that Izzy is very good at it. But I don't believe that Steed would go to Izzy for general captain training. Like, damn, the one time Izzy tried to be a captain, they mutinied on him in less than 24 hours. Why does he need to go to Izzy for being captain? And like, even like if you just wanted like a pirate training, like how to do piratey stuff, excuse me, why would he go to Izzy for that? Like, he and Izzy are not friends. Why would he want Izzy's help on how to be more piratey? Like, I feel like Olu, right? Like, Olu and Lucius are really the closest friends that Steed has. At least they were in season 1. They kind of they faded a little bit in this season. But again, that's more budget stuff, I think. It's not really their fault. But anyways, Olu was Steed's other like good friend among the crew, and Olu knows stuff about being a pirate, and Olu would be just a much better teacher in general. And like, Olu used to work for Spanish Jackie, so like I feel like he knows stuff. Why wouldn't he go to Olu for training? Or like, honestly, Fang would be a good choice too, but obviously Fang is in Ed's plotline. He's busy fishing, so we can't go to Fang. Or Jim. Like, Jim's a knife assassin. Jim could teach Steed some stuff. I just don't know, why would he ever go to Izzy for training? So instead, we'll just skip the whole little training stuff and go straight to, like, you know, Steed is feeling like, trying to feel like how to make things normal again. And so they're having a raid. Like, that's an idea. To, like, that's how he's going to get back to normal. Think things are normal again. We're going to have a raid, a very normal pirate activity. And so that's where we'll get the cursed suit. So we can still go into the cursed suit plotline from there. And because we do have a little bit more time now, we can have a little bit more of a slow build on that plotline, right? Because we're not having to do all the Izzy training arc stuff first. So we can have it start with Jim is the only one who believes, and then they like slowly convince everyone else, and then everyone else kind of starts to buy into the curse, you know, because of various coincidental events that happen. So that works. And we can still have Izzy like advise Steed about curses being bad. Because like that, it makes sense to a certain degree, right? Izzy is, of everyone here, Izzy probably does have the longest experience with being a pirate. Like Fang and Ed might have longer experience, maybe, I don't know. Those ones are, between those ones, it's kind of a toss up. But of everyone who's still on the ship now, Izzy is a fair pick for the longest experience of being a pirate, so it makes sense that he would be the one who has had experience in the past with, you know, curses and how that can kind of run havoc on a ship. And him, like, giving Steve the heads up that, like, hey, like, this stuff can get out of control real fast. Like, that can start to kind of build his little arc a little bit, right? Like, he's willing to give some advice to Steve. He's actually trying to help. But crucially, the difference is, instead of Izzy being like, you know, so you have to listen to the crew because they're, you know, the curse will get out of hand, so you just have to believe them or whatever. Like, no. Izzy's advice is going to be like, look, this curse shit is going to get out of hand, so Iron Fist, you need to stop it before it can spread. Because that's the kind of advice Izzy would give. Like, that's how Izzy thinks you should be a good pirate. Iron Fist. And Steed, who we already set up, like, he's really wanting to get things back to normal. And then he found this suit that looks just like, well, not just like, it's not, his old suits are better. But it's a fancy suit like he used to have. And he's so excited to have a fancy suit back. He's so feeling like, oh my God, here we go. Here's the step to get things back to normal. And he's like so gung-ho about it, he gets his blinders on, which Steve does sometimes. He gets too excited about his own thing, and he forgets about where other people are at and what they're feeling. So he's got his blinders on. And he's like, yeah, okay, we're gonna stamp it out. And like, he's on there too because he also doesn't believe the curse is real anyway. So he's like, we're gonna stamp it out. We're gonna stop this from happening. But it spreads. And then also, I want to fold Pete into this plotline a little bit more. So let's have Pete also have a little moment where he's like, oh my God, the curse is real. So we have this slow build where now the whole crew, they all think the curse is real. They're all super convinced. And then Steed's like, shit, okay, group convo, everybody together, group meeting. And he's like, Lucius, you too. And Lucius is like, I wasn't really a part of this. Like, Lucius also doesn't think the curse is real. But she's like, no, come join. You need to be a part of this conversation. It is a team meeting, and you are on the team crew meeting where you're part of the crew. And so Steed is going to be a little less bitter this time. But he is going to say, like, okay, this is my bad. I was so focused on what I wanted and on getting things back to normal like I wanted that I was not being sensitive to, your needs and what matters to you guys. Like, your emotions, your feelings are important too. And so I want to, because of that, I want to sit here and I want us to have a real talk. Are you guys actually okay with Ed being back on the crew? Because it was a metaphor the whole time, you guys. The curse suit is a metaphor for Ed. And Steed is so desperate to get things back to normal. And back to normal includes like having Ed be here as a co-captain with him and them all being like a happy family, found family together. And he's so fixated on getting it back to normal that he doesn't care, or he's not being as sensitive as he could be about the fact that like Ed did traumatize the rest of the crew, and like a lot of them weren't so comfortable with having him come back. And Steed is like realizing like, shit, that wasn't cool, you guys. So they are gonna be like, and he asked them that, and like, have them like, yeah, you know what, we are okay with it. We appreciate that he is wearing his cat collar. Like, he's obviously trying, and it wasn't a great apology, but he made it, so we like that. And someone be like, he fixed that door latch, and like, this is why I wanted to have him like ask other people if they need help, even though they tell him no. The fact that he's gone around and asked, is something that can come up. Like, yeah, and he offered to help me with whatever it was that I was working on. So like, yeah, you know what? I think we're okay. And then Steed is going to turn to Lucius. Like, hey, I know this was really hard for you. You were really having a hard time in particular. Are you really okay with it? That's why he said Lucius has to be a part of this conversation, right? And Lucius can be like, you know what? I really don't forgive him yet for pushing me overboard, but I think I've been blaming him for too much stuff. So I'm willing to try to give him a second chance, kind of thing. So there you go. There's where we close out Lucius' storyline, right? He had this arc. That's where it closed out. He agrees. We're gonna give Ed another chance. Okay. So that happens, and then Izzy, again, he's there, but he's not a participant in these conversations. But so he's there, just like in the canon version where he's there and watching. But unlike the canon version where he's like approved, like watching like in approval because he taught Steed to listen to his crew. He, the one person who would never teach that, taught Steed, the one person who did not need to learn it, to listen to his crew. It's weird. Instead, in this version, excuse me, Izzy is watching and like he's like, oh, okay, like thinking about it, like because he just saw this play out where he gave the advice to crush this rumor with an iron fist, and it went really poorly, and like it resulted in the crew freaking out and trying to tear Steed's clothes off his body. And but when Steed actually talked to them about the issues, it went well, and they were able to resolve things. And so he's like, oh, okay. Like, he's seeing the results of this, and he's seeing that it actually works. And he's like, okay, well, maybe I was wrong. So, okay, we had the conversation, great. And so Steed's like, great, so about the suit. And they're like, no, we have to destroy the suit. We still need to destroy the suit. So, like, that's like a comedy beat. And I'm gonna say have them like destroy the suit. Like maybe they're gonna go up on deck and like ritually burn it to cleanse it or something. Just because it feels weird that we came down on, not that we didn't come down on the curse is real, but we came down on we're all agreeing to consider the curse real. and then we're gonna offload the curse on someone else. Like, I know it's they make a joke out of it. Like, does that make us a bad person? I think that just makes us smart. Like, I get that's a joke, but I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't love it. And also, the raid obviously was there to theoretically close out the training arc, right? Because I guess Steed, it was all off screen. We didn't see any of it, but theoretically Steed was supposed to do really well in this little battle. So prove that the training Izzy gave him was paying off or something, I guess. So we don't need to do that. We're not doing the training arc. So instead they're going to be doing like this burning of the suit, and then Steed can be sitting there and like watching the suit burn, and he's like sad about it. So he's like sad about it, and they're watching it, and like kind of Lucius slides up to him and sits down. I miss their friendship, so we're gonna have a little bit of a friendship moment for them here. As Steed is watching the suit burn, and he's like, you know, well, so much for things getting back to normal. And Lucius is gonna kind of observe, you can't go back to normal. You can never go back. All you can do is just, you know, keep going forward. So that's our lesson for here. It's like, you can't go back. You never go back. You just have to keep going on to the next good thing. So they have that little quiet moment, and then Steed can maybe ask, you know, like, are you going forward? And he's like, you know, I'm trying to. And he can be looking at Pete from across the way, like, oh, that's sweet. And then after he says that, you know, I'm trying to go forward, we go to the proposal where, you know, he proposes to Pete. The difference being now here is, instead of it being Lucius like, oh, I realized I fucked up and I wasn't paying enough attention to you in my trauma, and I didn't make my trauma about you, and that was bad. He is like, hey, you know, proposing because, like, out of like love and gratitude, because Pete sees him, and, like, you know, he really does see him. Like, he was able to look at that drawing and be like, hey, I identify, you know, where Lucius's hang up was and why he was having trouble moving forward. And is able to call Lucius out on that bullshit. And so Lucius appreciates that. And so it gives us this clear sense that, you know, this is a proposal that's happening because Lucius has moved forward because Pete has been so supportive and helpful, rather than it being Lucius proposing as apology for a fight where he didn't make his trauma about Pete. I don't like that, and it doesn't feel like a strong foundation for a relationship. Okay, so great. We have the whole little moonlight conversation with Steed and Ed, other than removing the explicit reference to being whim prone. No real notes there. Great, I love it. Beautiful moment. Then the last thing, and like this one is kind of on it, because I don't know if this might be a budget issue, but ideally I would love to then end with that little conversation that Ricky has with the like Navy about how we're going to destroy all pirates. We're going to destroy all the pirates all the time ever. I would love to stick it at the end of this scene here, which like is what happened in the first season, right? The 5th episode, we ended with the moonlight scene, but then we had this scene with Chauncey talking to King George. So kind of similar thing with Ricky talking to the Navy about destroying pirates. We can cut the part where Zhang sends him the nose. Like we can stick that little scene in maybe where he actually has the thing in canon in the next episode. I think it'll help the pacing a little bit if he comes up again at the end of this episode. But again, if that's like a budget issue to hire him back for, because that puts him in an extra episode, it is what it is, that's fine. Okay, so moving on to episode 6. This episode, man, okay, I like a lot and then I didn't like it a lot. So at the start of the episode, honestly, I feel like we can cut the whole thing with Ned at the start of the episode. The thing is, I feel like that gives his character too much weight. It makes him feel like he's gonna be a bigger deal than he actually is. Definitely, while the show was still airing, like while the episodes were still coming out, there were definitely conversations around him where it kind of felt like people felt like, oh, he's gonna be like our third main antagonist. Because there was like a lot, it's not just that we introduced him at the beginning of the episode, it's like there's like a lot of symbolism there, right? Him in a lighthouse with the whole lighthouse symbolism, so much of it in the first season. So we introduced him like in a lighthouse and he's like on this silvery suit, like, so he like is the lighthouse, and just, there's a lot where it felt like we were trying to do something with him and like make something significant of him, but then he dies at the end of the episode and like he doesn't really matter at all. Like even the next episode where the fact that Steve killed him was like a big deal, it's like a MacGuffin in a way. Like it's just it could have been anything. Steve could have done anything to impress people. It didn't matter that it was killing Ned specifically, and Ned as a character did not matter at all after this episode. So I feel like giving him this big huge introduction at the beginning, it makes him out to be more than he ends up being. So I think I'd probably cut it. So you could have, if you had the Ricky scene, if we couldn't get it at the end of the last episode, you could go ahead and put that here instead. But otherwise, we'll just get straight into the conversation that Ed and Izzy have about like the incoming storm, which I feel like also works better if we didn't just have the whole thing with Ned, like, because it feels so much less dramatic, right? We see like there's this bad guy, you know, and he's after Ed, and then Ed and Izzy have a conversation where Ed's like, I feel a storm coming on. It's like, really? Do you? Wow. It's like, yeah, obviously we just saw that. This is not foreshadowing. We just saw that. Whereas if it's like we didn't just see that. So actually, no, I probably wouldn't move the Ricky thing at the beginning if we didn't, because again, if we don't just see a villain and then Ed's like, ooh, I feel a storm coming on, instead of him being like weirdly psychic about a thing we just saw, it's just like a ominous foreshadowing note. But anyways, speaking of that whole, I feel a storm coming on, just kind of changing that whole conversation up a little bit. So like I said already, is he's not drunk when he comes up to Ed and thinks he's Roach. Instead, like, you know, Ed's sitting there looking out in the distance, whatever, and Izzy kind of walks up and he says, do those clouds look like sausages to you? Which, callback, right? So this is kind of, we are building into Izzy's arc again here. So we're the first time we see Ed, well, not the first time we see Ed and Izzy together, the first time we saw them together was in his, like, cabin. But the first time we, like, really get to see, I don't know, it's not the first time of anything. It feels like the first time in some ways. We see them interacting in episode 4 of the first season. They're on the ship, and, you know, Ed's like, hey, look at those clouds. Those look like sausages to you. And, like, Izzy will not participate, right? As Ed says, it's like pulling teeth with you sometimes, man. And so when Izzy comes up to him and says, hey, do those clouds look like sausages to you? This is Izzy's, like, you know, I'm trying to apologize, but I don't actually have the emotional intelligence and capacity to just say I'm sorry. So this is me, like, trying to make a peace offering. Like, I recognize that I was kind of shit to you before about this stuff, and so now I'm trying to meet you at where you wanted to meet me before. Like, I'm trying. And so Ed can kind of be like, and have Ed, like, he's not going to verbally acknowledge it, but you can tell, like, he's like, oh, okay. Like, he recognizes the reference to a certain degree, and he gets what Izzy's trying to do. And you can kind of tell that he is, like, appreciating it. Like, he's like, oh, okay, yeah. No, they look more like, I don't know, pancakes, whatever, to me. And Izzy's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Right? So he's trying to participate with Ed on the level that Ed wanted to participate on, and also showing that he recognizes he didn't get it before. When Ed was talking about the clouds, Ed was like making a point about the weather. And Izzy knows that now. He gets it. He's like, Ed's like, they look like pancakes. And Izzy's like, okay, cool. What does that mean? I'm here. I'm listening. Tell me. And Ed can be like, well, it doesn't really, nothing really. And then he can be like, but I don't know. I feel like there's a storm coming. I just can't see it. And Izzy's like, hey, you know what? Whatever it is, we'll get through it. It's fine. We'll manage it together. And then then Ed can say, okay, great. And then Ed's about to walk off, and he says, sorry about your life. And then he walks off. So that's good. So Izzy has come and made sort of the best attempt that he can, poor emotionally constipated man, at making an apology, and it works, right? Ed meets him back, he engages back with him, and also apologizes himself. Like, he understands, he gets it, what Izzy was trying to do, and he appreciates it. And so he also apologizes to Izzy for shooting him. So it's good. We're making progress. Izzy's arc is moving forward. We love to see it. Okay, and then somewhere at some point in this episode, I want something that kind of gives us an implication that, by the way, it's been a couple weeks since, the last episode. Something more than, like, there are the little signs, like, Ed's, like, face is less beat up. But, like, a more overt acknowledgement, like, hey, some time has indeed passed. Because it's weird if it's only been a day. But, like, Lucius and Pete's, sex marathon seems to imply that, yeah, they proposed, Lucius proposed yesterday, and they immediately had a 24-hour sex marathon. And so this is the next day, which that doesn't really make any sense. Like, apparently Ed's penitence area lasted a day. I don't like that. So just something somewhere, it doesn't matter where, to just, like, let us know, by the way, it's been a couple weeks, it's been a month, whatever, something like that. And it's fine. Like, Lucius and Pete can still have a 24-hour fuckfest. Like, they just had a couple of them since they've been engaged. Like, you don't understand. Engagement sex hits different, you guys. So, it's not their fault. They can't help themselves. So we have the Ricky scene, which, again, ideally would have happened at the end of the previous episode. If we can't do it, then we just keep the scene the way it is. If we can do that at the previous episode, then here, this scene would just be, like, Ricky getting the nose. Like, just the latter half of that scene. Only he probably would be, like, at his desk or something, right? But it's just the part where he gets the nose. Or maybe even we see Jen sending it to him. Something like that. Okay, in the party scene, I'm cutting. Izzy doesn't get his song. Izzy doesn't get to do drag. Like, stop stealing people's things, Izzy. Singing is Frenchie's thing. Drag is Weejohn's thing now. You can't have everyone's thing. Not every moment has to be about you. This is not the Izzy show. Beyond that, I don't think he's really earned that. Like, I don't believe that he is that far along on his arc. His arc is coming, but we're not all the way to the point where he does drag. He can be at the party and, like, kind of like, we can see him maybe easily off to the side a little bit, but, like, he's enjoying himself. And maybe Frenchie and John, Frenchie's playing the lute and he's singing, and John is, like, doing the whole drag routine with them, like, it's a thing with them together. And then maybe they walk up to Izzy and, like, Frenchie, like, leans in, like, he's, like, not an actual microphone, but he's, like, come sing this line kind of thing, and Izzy sings a line of the song, and everyone's like, yay! So, like, something like that is fine if we really want to have something for Izzy, but he doesn't get to be the star of the whole EM show. Like, he's not our specialist unicorn boy, and you will never make me believe that. And you are never going to make the people who hate Izzy happy with that. Okay, So honestly, like the rest of the episode, not the rest of it, but a lot of the rest of the episode, I really like. Like I really like a lot of the stuff with Ned. The whole little, Ed broke my record thing and I'm mad about it. We can just like insert into like his conversation with Ed and Steed at one point, since we cut him from the beginning. But like all the rest of it, the torture works. I like the way that Steed manages to beat him by just being nice and winning Ned's crew over. And then I like it. I love it. It's so great. So great. Perfect. Keep it. Then we get to the point where the crew is leaving and Ned gets left behind for some reason. Like already, first time I'm watching it, like I already think that's weird. Like, why is Ned still here? And so then what happens, and that pretty much ruined the show for me at that point. Like that's when I died inside. Because I don't believe it. Like it feels so incredibly out of character for Steed, and I don't understand what the point of it was. Like it doesn't, I don't know. I'm just gonna let it go because I could just sit here and just be upset about that all day. Instead, what we're gonna have happen is Ned is just gonna be sent off with his crew, right? They're gonna have him. If they want to kill him, they can kill him. They want to, whatever they want to do with him, they can do with him. Not the Revenge Crew's problem. So I don't know what we're trying to do with that. It doesn't make sense. Like, Steed just had a huge win, right? Like, he just beat the crew. Not only just beat them, but like beat them by being, the kind, supportive, caring, responsive to their needs, talk it through as a crew guy. And like, he had a big win by doing that. So why would he feel insecure and like he needs to kill Ned? Because Ned is like trash talking him, this guy that he's never met before in his life. Like he has no emotional stake in what Ned thinks of him. And Ned's not speaking to any insecurities really that Steed has that we've like been building up or anything. And again, Steed should be at a real high point. All he does is win. So why does he? I don't know. So we're not doing it. We're not doing it. Ned goes off, is sent off with the old crew, and then Steed is like super pumped and he's confident, and like Steed being happy and confident and winning is like the sexiest goddamn thing that Ed has ever seen. And so that's why they have sex, because Ed's like, damn, I can't not fuck him after that. So beautiful, happy sex. And then so then we have, instead of like Izzy singing a song again, we're not doing that. But we can have Izzy, like, he can still have a moment here. He gets a moment where he reflects that, okay, look at that, we did weather the storm, right? Call back to the earlier part of the episode, like, yeah, we did it. I knew we could do it. So that's cool. But then our end scene is we see, we had already seen Zhang and Ricky, like, they like come to their agreement or whatever, and then we have an end scene where we see that Ricky is gonna betray Zhang. Like, oh my god, no, we did not weather the storm. There is still a storm a-coming. Part of the reason I'm putting that end scene in there is to build up into the next episode, where so there's this thing with this episode with the clocks and the bombs. And I don't know if it's supposed to be super obvious that the clocks are bombs. It is very obvious that the clocks are bombs. They showed me the grandfather clock and I was like, oh, it's a bomb. Like immediately. But I don't know if that was the intention, or if the intention was this was supposed to be like a surprise twist at some point. Or like, I don't know. And because I don't know if it was supposed to be obvious, the fact that it is obvious makes it feel like a dumb twist rather than just something that was obvious. So if we end the previous episode by showing, yes, Ricky is going to betray Jang. And then we come into this episode and Ricky has given Jang a clock for every ship that she has. Like, obviously it's a bomb. And now we know that they know, like, we know that they know that we know that it's a bomb. Or it's a trap, at least, of some capacity. So we know that this is not supposed to be a twist. This is, tension. This is us showing the bomb under the seat 10 minutes before it goes off. I think it just works better like that, rather than trying to make it a twist, because you're going to make it a, like, believable twist. Not believable twist, like a twist that would actually trick people, basically. Okay, so, Man on Fire. First thing is, so the first thing actually is the whole, like, morning conversation. No. Backtrack. First thing is Ed in the robe. I don't want that blue robe. I want the pink robe. I want the pink robe back, okay? Ed saved something from, after the purge. He saved the pink robe because, according to Gypsy Taylor, costume designer, she did have the idea in mind that this blue robe was supposed to be a robe that was saved. And I don't know if, like, David Jenkins was in on that or whatever, but, like, that was her thought. And my thought is, if that was the intention, like, why don't we just have it be the robe that we know? And then we can be like, oh my God, he saved the robe. Plus, it makes more sense that he would save this robe that was emotionally significant to him, as opposed to this random blue robe that was not. And then also, in addition to the pink robe, when Ed comes back and, is sitting with his breakfast in bed with Steve, Steve will have the yellow robe. But he's not going to be wearing the yellow robe. It's going to be draped, like, he's got his sheet wrapped around, kind of up to his chest. The yellow robe is going to be draped over that. It's the tail, right? It's the merman tail. Probably also we want to make the merman tail a little less orange, a little bit more yellowy originally, so that it's a closer, right? But so it just for that visual storytelling, it's the merman tail. So that's cool. And then that kind of gives us an insight into why Ed was picturing, like, Steve like that, right? He had that yellow gold tail, like the yellow gold robe, because, like, last time when Ed was really caught deep in the darkness of his own mind, like drowning in it, the bathtub scene in season 1, right? And Steve came and saved him. And during that scene, Ed was tucked underneath the yellow robe. So, like, that's why Ed was visualizing him that way in the gravy basket. And, like, we don't have to explain it, but you can see that maybe Ed has made that connection too, as he's seeing this on spread across Steve's legs. And that's what prompts him to make the comment about, oh, you saved me. And just like a little note, it's kind of weird the way that this conversation plays out. It almost seems like Ed literally thinks that Steve was a merman who came and saved him. I don't think that Ed thinks that, but it is kind of weird that, like, I just at one point have Ed specify that I could hear you talking, like, so this was in my head and I could hear you talking, and because of that I visualized you as a mermaid. Like, just clarify that point at some point, so it doesn't sound like Ed literally thinks that Steve was merman. Again, I don't think that he thinks that. I think it would be nice if we had a little point of clarification on there. Like I said, so he could be like you could kind of have him like touching, Steve's leg, rubbing Steve's leg through the robe, and like he's kind of, hand over the robe, and that makes him think, hey, I need to just thank you, because he's processing that. And then also the yellow robe here on Steve is like a foreshadowing for the fact that they're gonna get into a fight, because the yellow robe is like it's like the battle jacket or whatever, but also it's really the comfort robe, and it's foreshadowing that Steed's gonna be out there like, oh yeah, I'm so great, all I do is win, and then it's gonna turn south on him. And so that's cool too. Then we're gonna have the interruption, and I don't think it would be a budget issue to just switch it to Lucius. And we should switch it to Lucius because, first of all, this dialogue, Izzy steals everyone's things. That's like Lucius's dialogue. That's dialogue that Lucius would say, and it's not dialogue that Izzy would say. It does not sound like Izzy. And frankly, Izzy at this point has not earned the right to make fun of them. Like, I'm glad that he's more on board with them dating now, but like, coming from him, jokes about like how, ooh, God, you great, you finally had sex is like weird and invasive. Cause like a couple months ago you were trying to kill Steed for trying to date Ed, and now you're like making jokes about them having sex. It's weird. It's kind of creepy, man. Stop it. But Lucius, poor long-suffering Lucius, who did so much emotional labor for these guys to try to make this relationship happen, he has the right to kind of razz them a bit about it. And again, it just sounds more like Lucius. But if it is like an issue and we have to have Khan here instead, then just change the tone of it a little bit. Like, have the tone be that Izzy does not want to be here. Like, Izzy doesn't want to be here any more than Steve or Ed want him here. But he does, he has to be here to let them know that they docked. And the reason that Izzy has to be the one here to let them know is because they all had a vote and they forced Izzy to do it because he's still their least favorite. Like, nobody wanted to come and interrupt the captains after they definitely went off to have sex last night, but somebody had to do it, so Izzy got voted into it. Which, honestly, that would also be a good growth moment for Izzy, that everyone voted him to go do it, and then he agreed to do it because they voted for it. Like, good for you, Izzy, moving forward. So that's that. Then we have, let's see, which plot line do I want to start with? Kind of all over the place. Okay, so I think we're just going to kind of more go chronologically. Yeah, okay, so we have the sort of lunch scene, right, where Ed and Steed have their little date, and then the fans walk up, and then here is going to be a real big change. So Steed did not kill Ned last episode, right? So everyone can't get excited about Steed having killed Ned. So instead, they're going to come up and be like, oh my God, I heard you bested Ned Lowe just by talking. And Steed's like, yeah, that was me. And they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I heard that you bested Zhang too and stole your ship out right from under her nose. Steed's like, yeah, I did do that. And they're like, cool, so cool. I also heard that you fixed Anne, Bonnie, and Mary Reed's relationship and got them back into pirating. And Steve's like, is that how they're telling that story? Yeah, okay, yeah, happy to help. But, you know, like, Ed here also was a big help for that. And Ned's like, nah, man, talk it through as a crew. This is all you. It's all you. Just like kind of a cute moment there where Steve's like, you know, wanting to share the credit because that's kind of the person he is. And Ed is like, nah, you know what? I want my boyfriend to have his moment to shine. He deserves it. And then just let people get excited about that. So that's kind of what we're going to build to in this episode as far as Steed stuff is, like, he is going to be, like, really famous and, like, everyone's excited to see him and, like, really building up. Like, he is the it man of the hour. But it's all going to be about, you know, for Steed being himself, for, you know, being, you know, the kind and compassionate, for being clever, for like the stuff that we have all seen all along him doing and have been like, yeah, that's great, and cheering him on for. He is now finally getting the recognition for that. Because I think it's just nicer, first of all, to see that. And it feels more believable to me. Like, I don't believe that Stede would get caught up in excitement about people cheering him on for killing someone. Like, first of all, it's weird that Stede's not more messed up about that. Like, it seemed like at the end of the previous episode, like, this was a really traumatic moment for him. But now all of a sudden he's just like ready to cheer it on and be happy about it. And like, I've seen people suggest like, oh, well, Stede just like really wants validation and support, so he's just willing to go along. But like, we've already seen that. The episode 10, the first season, like, that happened, right? He was in that like pub, bar, whatever, and you know, Jeffrey came up to him. He's like, hey, I heard you're the Gentleman Pirate. Come tell us stories. And like, everyone like super excited to hear about the Gentleman Pirate. But as soon as he is not performing piracy the way that they think piracy should be performed, they're like, I don't think this guy's a real pirate. I don't think he really killed anyone. I think he's a loser. And Steve's like, oh shit, no, I definitely kill people. And also Blackbeard is evil and the son of the devil. And like, just saying what he needs to say to validate, you know, and to get their continued acclaim. But like, it's super clear that he's not happy, and like, this is making him miserable, and he knows that this is not satisfying, and like, he has figured out that like this approval that maybe he has been changing and wanting his whole life, like, it's hollow if it's not actually for like himself. If he has to pretend to keep it, it's not worth it. And you know, he has, you know, maybe like, you know, because he hasn't been able to do that. He's never been able to successfully play the part to get approval. And so now he's finally been able to do it. And it doesn't make him any happier than not having approval does. So he learned that lesson. So it doesn't make sense that he totally is fallen right back into it again. Like, it's not something that he was ever super prone to anyways. And yeah, so it doesn't make sense to me that this would work with him, and he would get so caught up in it, and so quickly too, and over something that he just, no. So instead, we are going to celebrate Stede for being Stede, and that's what's getting everyone happy. Okay, so switching over to Zhang a little bit. So right, we noticed all the little badges or whatever from their sign-ups, and then Olu's looking over and he's like, she's so cool, and Jem and Archie are teasing him a little bit, but not like teasing him like, oh my god, she's your one true love or whatever, kind of, that's the kind of like vibe to it when they're teasing. In Canada, I don't like it because we haven't actually seen him talk about Zhang at all since, you know, episode 3. She's just like not even been a thing. So, we haven't had time for it, which is fine, but then you can't try to sell us on the idea that like Olu is obsessed with her and he's like longing for her. And like, they even have this like the scene with Swede where he's like talking about like, you know, how much he misses her and stuff. And it's, the thing is, it's obviously supposed to mirror the scene from season 1, episode 8, when Jim has just left and Olu is sad and drunk and talking about how much he misses Jim, and Swede is like, okay. Except for the fact that it mirrors this really underlines how empty the Olu Zhang thing is, because Jim and Olu had been like built up for a long time. So, and like, they just had this whole previous episode where like Olu met Jim's family, and then it was like, I could be your family and all that. Like, it was a lot. And so when Olu was sad, it made sense. But here, again, he hasn't mentioned about Zhang even in episodes. And now all of a sudden he's real sad about it. And it just feels hollow. So we cut that scene entirely, which is, I am sad. I love the joke with Swede. Like, I can put a good word for you. There's a lot of turnover here, husband-wise. Like, that cracked me up. I love that. But we're just going to have to cut that scene. And instead, what we're going to have is... when Jim and Archie approach Zhang, like on Olu's behalf, instead we're gonna have Jim and Archie and Olu are all approaching Zhang about like, hey, how would you like to join our polycule? And Zhang can kind of be like, you know,
I really am only interested in Olu. And then they're like, well, you know what? We can share. And I feel like very Archie and I was like, yeah, we're great at sharing. So like, if you only want Olu, that's fine. We can share Olu with you. And Olu's like, yeah, I'd be down for that. And Zhang's like, okay, let me think about it. Thank you. And then just like, that's it. So that's our no drama polycule. And because again, since we don't have time to really like talk about the nature of their relationship and like how that all works, I think it's better if we just kind of like, it's cool. They're all together and now they want Zhang to be a part of their all together. When it's Jim and Archie going to talk to Zhang on Olu's behalf, it kind of feels like, you know, they're a couple and they're like trying to hook Olu up with Zhang, which is weird because the previous episodes, like in the background, it seemed like it was just the three of them. So I don't know. I don't know what they were trying to do there. It's weird. So just instead, Olu, Jim, Archie have come to invite Zhang to join the polycule, even if maybe she just wants to be boyfriend, girlfriend with Olu, while Olu also has these other two partners on the side. So like, that's cool if that's what you want to do. And Zhang's like, you just gotta think about it. Because honestly, I don't see Zhang as being particularly interested in Jim and Archie, at least not right away. Like, she just doesn't know them. And like, she also does not strike me as a sharer. Like, she doesn't strike me as someone who'd be like, yeah, I'm definitely into an open relationship. I'm definitely very poly. Like, maybe she could be that eventually, but it doesn't seem like that's something that, and she doesn't strike me as a sharer. It doesn't seem like that's something that she maybe has thought much about in the past. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna think about it. They're like, great, they leave. And like, kind of that's where that plot line ends, pretty much. That's where we ended off in the episode. We never actually have Olu like agreeing to go with Zhang or whatever, which is good. Like, because I just, it undermines the found family vibes again. Like, we're trying to have this, like, the whole crew is family or whatever. So if Olu decides to leave with Zhang, like, I don't know, that feels sad. It doesn't feel earned, really. Like, with Buttons leaving the crew to become a seagull, it's like, yeah, I could see how that is fulfillment of his, like, deepest desires. He deserves it. But, like, Olu leaving to join Zhang's crew, like, I don't, and it's, again, sweet, like, I get it, that was a budget, so I'm willing to be more flexible with it, but, like, Olu doesn't actually leave. Like, this is not a budget thing where we're trying to write him out for a couple episodes. This is just, like, something he decided to do and then it fell through. So I don't like that. So if we just end it there with them inviting her to join and her being like, I think about it, then we don't ever actually have to consider the logistics of how that would work, which is good. So anyway, so they leave, and then Zhang, who had been like, Zhang's gonna be like standing next to, like, her little sign-up table is going on in the background, and, you know, she stepped aside to have this conversation with them, and she's gonna now walk over to the sign-up table again, and there's no one in line, which is weird. She's like, what happened? Like, we've been having sign-ups all day, and now there's no one. And she's like looking around, and then she like sees on the ground, like, one of her little red little thingies is just someone like apparently ripping off, dropping on the ground. And she's like, oh. So that's her mystery that she's gonna solve instead of us dealing with the Olu Zhang subplot. This is Zhang's little thing. She's like, what's going on? Why are people ditching my fleet? Okay. So back with Ed and Steve, they're at Jackie's, and Ed and Jackie are having their conversation while Steve is like being like all famous and whatnot. And so Ed's talking about like, yeah, I'm just gonna be a normal guy, and kind of talking about also like, yeah, we're like kind of throwing the idea out there of like retirement or whatever, and Jackie's like, does he know that? And pointing to Steve over there being like, the king of the whatever. And Ed's like, yeah, we've talked about retirement before. And she's like, recently? And like, yeah, no, we've talked about it. We've discussed it. We've been communicating. And you know, Steed and I, we have something special, and and like, Ed is getting anxious because he's realizing that Steed has already told him, and it's come up before a couple times now, that Steed needs time to think things through, and he can't just make decisions and just go and do things. We can't rush him. And maybe they had sex and then Ed abruptly decided they should retire together and, you know, live life, you know, quiet domestic life together without ever actually mentioning to Steed that he has ambitions of being an innkeeper or any of it. And like, he is kind of like, oops, I fucked up. But doing that thing that you do sometimes when you fuck up and you're doubling down and like, no, I did everything right. I'm fine. And getting defensive about it. And then, so then Ed is having this conversation with Izzy. And, you know, similar kind of vibes. Where like, it's like, look, Izzy, I've talked about retirement before, right? And Izzy's like, like that one time, I guess. And it's like, no, definitely, I have talked about it more than that. And Izzy's like, okay, well, is this about this morning? And if we keep it with Izzy, you know, having been the one who walked in, we can do like a little joke where it's like, oh my God, we were just eating breakfast. Calm down. Whatever. But anyways, Izzy is like, no, I mean, like, I saw you throw your leathers overboard this morning. And then Izzy is going to be like, look, I don't pretend like I understand your and Bonnet's relationship, but I do know that you can't just decide for someone else what's best for them. It will go badly. And there we go. That's Izzy getting to give. He gets to be the wise advisor here. He gets to give the sage advice. But he has earned it now, you guys. Like, he has really earned the right to give this advice. And, like, it is good advice. And it's advice, again, that's continuing his redemption arc forward. Izzy has learned from his mistakes last season. He has learned that he tried to decide what was best for Ed to be Blackbeard. And it went really poorly for him. And he learned from that. And now he is giving Ed the same advice. You can't just decide for someone else what's best for them. It will not go well. So that's good. He gets to have that moment. I don't like him, but we have decided to give him redemption, and so he deserves his moment in the sun because that is good writing. Unfortunately, Ed's not ready to hear it. So he is still getting real defensive. So it's gonna be back to Steve. The whole thing with the drunk man, obviously we're not gonna have him burn a man alive. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's such a huge escalation from the last episode, had he killed Ned. Having him just like casually immolating someone and laughing about it, like, who the fuck is this man? Even if I believe Steve was willing to do stuff for approval, I don't believe that he would do that for approval. I do not like it. Also, super insulting to John for him to burn a man alive and John is not even there. No. So rude, Steve. So rude. So instead, to kind of keep with the same vibe that we're building, that, you know, Steed is getting all this approval for just being him, you know, he's sitting there and he's like laughing and talking with his new crew, his new homies, his fanboys. And then the drunk man is going to be like, I'm going to kill you, because he's like trying to prove how cool he is or whatever. And Steed's like, oh man, like, it sounds like maybe you weren't getting enough approval at home. Like, you know, maybe your dad was shitty to him, or like, you know, it seems like you maybe have not gotten the approval and the validation that you need, and I'm sorry. And this guy just like bursts into tears, like, oh my God, my dad never loved me, and just crying. And he's like, yeah, come over here. And like the fanboys are like, you can bring him over the stairs. Like, come on, cry it out. Let's let it out. Something more like that, right? Oh. So it's, again, Steed saving the day, winning people over just by being his, like, talk it through as a crew, compassionate dude. Hi, baby. You're a good girl. And then, you know, he notices Ed is absent. He's going to go look for him. And then they have their fight. So the fight. So the canon fight is so bad. You guys, it's so bad. I don't understand what they're fighting about. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Ed at all. Because Ed is just like, I'm gonna go become a fisherman. Like, just out of fucking nowhere. And then he's like talking about how last night was a mistake because I asked you to go slow and it hasn't been like that. And like, Ed, buddy, you're the one who woke up and said we had sex one time, so now I'm gonna retire with him. Like, that was all you. Steve has not been putting pressure on this situation. Steve's been off with his new friends, new fans, and just like having a time of his life. Steve has not been rushing anything besides wanting to have sex the night before. Like, and it'd be one thing if, like, it's fine for Ed to have sex and like consent in the moment and then regret it, but it's like, what made him regret it, right? It wasn't like he slept on it and then the next morning he realized, like, oh, that was a mistake. Like, he seemed really happy. Again, he was ready to retire and run off with Steve. And then it can't have been anything that Steve has done or the rest of the course of the episode, because Steve has not been pressuring him to like keep moving. Like, it wasn't like they had sex and now Steve's like, oh my god, now we're gonna be like, let's get married and like whatever. Like, he hasn't been trying to put a label on it. He hasn't been trying to do anything. They had a nice little lunch date, and then, you know, Steve kind of went off to do his own thing with it for the afternoon. And like, that's what Ed says is the problem. So like, that doesn't make any sense. But there's not anything in the conversation that would like indicate, or anything about the way Ed has been acting that would indicate, okay, this is like a cover, and like his real problem is, like, I can make random guesses. Is his real problem that he's seeing Steve get success with piracy, and Ed, knowing that he doesn't want to be a pirate, is like, oh shit, so I have to leave, but I can't ask him to do that? Or is it like Ed is uncomfortable because the way that Steve has been acting is like really out of character, and it's not like, you know, the person that Ed fell in love with, and it's like, you know, I don't like who you are around these guys. Like, that could be it. Like, there are a lot of things that it could be, but nothing that is indicated. And the fact that there are a lot of things that it could be, honestly, ultimately speaks poorly to it, because I shouldn't have to guess at random what it might be. And I've seen so many people talk about this fight and come up with so many different things. They're like, well, this is what Ed is feeling, because there's no clear indication as to what he's feeling, right? He's just like, I'm gonna run off and become a fisherman. And like, when did this become a breakup? And like, Steve is, of course, upset because he's just randomly getting dumped. And like, I don't know, it's weird. And then he's like weirdly mean about the fish thing. Like, Ed is like, I'm running off to be a fisherman. And then Steve's like, what? A fisherman? Like, that's why, right? Because Ed doesn't know Ed's caught one fish ever. And Ed is like, you know, I caught that one fish. You said it was a good fish. And Steve is like, the fish was fine? And the fish was whatever. And Ed is like, whatever. And Steve's like, actually, it was a stupid fish. Well, he didn't say stupid fish. He's not quite that mean. He's like, you know, I just said that to make you feel good about yourself. Like, why do you need to say that? That's so mean. Even if it was true, why would you ever say that in that moment? It wasn't necessary, because it doesn't matter if it was a good fish or not. And it's not like he was snapping back because he was like now mad at Ed. Like, he hasn't been mad at Ed. Like, he was just like, yeah, the fish was fine. Like, he seemed like he was trying to preserve Ed's feelings, right? Yeah, well, oh yeah, it was a fine fish, but that's not, you know, the point, is what he should be saying. But instead, all of a sudden, he's mad. He's like, I was just trying to make you feel good. Whatever, it was a stupid fish. I don't know, it's so weird. Like, it's so unnecessarily mean out of nowhere. And like, all you have to say is it doesn't matter how good the fish was. It was one fish ever. And now you're becoming a fisherman. Like, this is out of nowhere. This is a rash decision. Like, we have been talking about being whim prone. Not in my version, but in their version they have. Like, this seems like a whim, Ed. So yeah, it's a weird fight, and I don't care for it. So we are going to change it pretty extensively. So instead of Ed being like, I'm leaving to become a fisherman, Ed is gonna be like, hey, we should go be fishermen. Like, let's leave. Let's retire. Let's become fishermen. And Steve's like, what? No. I don't want to be a fisherman. And Ed's like, well, like, you know, what we had last night, it was really special. I thought it was great. And like, I feel like, you know, like talking about I feel like we really have a commitment and together, like I really want to be with you. And he's like, yeah, also true. I really want to be with you and I'm very committed to our relationship. I don't want to be a fisherman, Ed. And Ed's like, I don't want to be a pirate. And I told you that, like I told you that a long time ago back on the beach, like way before any of this, I told you I didn't want to go back to this life. And Steve's like, we don't, it's not the same. We don't have to go back to life of buying head off turtles and feeding the guy turtles for life. Like we're not going back to that life. We can be pirates, but it's different now, right? I'm doing things differently. And like, he's like, well, we're still fucking pirates and I would rather die than go back to being Blackbeard. I'm just gonna sit with that for a minute. Like, she's like doesn't even know how to process that. Like, that's a big thing to say. And then Ed just like, starts to walk away and he's like, wait, where are you going? And it's like, I just need some space. I need a minute before we say either of us say anything that we regret. So like, I need to get some air. I'll be back. Right? So this is not a breakup because I don't care about the breakups anymore. You can't just keep having them like break up and then get back together. No, let this be a fight. And it has more tension if it's not a breakup, to be honest. Like, you raise the stakes by lowering them at this point. Because if it's like just a random breakup out of nowhere, like, I don't care. Because obviously they're gonna get back together. And the next episode's the last episode of the season, so obviously they're gonna get back together by the next episode. I can't invest myself in a breakup. But a fight is, I have more investment in. Like, okay, well, how are they gonna work this out? Yeah, sure, I like do know that they are already gonna work it out. But like, if it's just a fight, I'm not being asked to believe that they're not going to work it out. It's like a breakup is theoretically supposed to be a final thing, right? A fight is not. So I'm like, can be more invested in like, well, how are they going to fix it? So yeah, I believe it more. And then this fight kind of ties back to some of the stuff that we've been having issues with, right? Where, Ed is kind of rushing into, like, he has this, you know, always wants to have this plan and this is the next thing that I'm going to do and let's do it, let's go. And Steve needs the time to kind of think things through and kind of get on board with this plan before he's ready to go. Like, we have established that this is their issue. Or this is an issue. And this is the same issue that led to the fight the breakup the last time. And maybe they haven't quite talked it out as much as they need to and figured it out. But they're, you know, moving because they're actually forward, because they're actually talking and Ed's taking some space, but not a breakup. And then Steve is having this problem. We're going to see that he is so excited about being a pirate that he hasn't really fully considered Ed's side of it. Like, Ed has talked about not wanting to be a pirate anymore, but Steve just doesn't quite process how deeply that is felt by him. And he's like feeling like, okay, well, we're being pirates, but in a different way, so it should be fine, and not really fully understanding where Ed's coming from on that. Which leads to the Steve and Izzy conversation, where, you know, Izzy rather comes up to Steve and is like, hey, what's going on, what happened, and Steed, like, is gonna talk with him, because he's like, he doesn't totally get what happened. So he's like, okay, so what happened? Like, we had this fight, and that Ed made the comment about he'd rather die than be Blackbeard again. And Izzy tells him, like, to be honest, that doesn't surprise me. And he says, when Ed was like being Blackbeard earlier, before, he seemed like he was already dead, to be honest. Like, he just seemed like he was just waiting to die. And Steed is like, oh, thinks, before, when I hurt him really badly. And this is when Izzy is going to be like, no, and it wasn't you. He was actually, when you broke up with him, like, he was getting better, and then I told him that he would be better off dead than being like that, and I told him, like, confesses to that whole conversation, like that big moment in, episode 10 that no one else knew about up until this point, about how Izzy was involved, and like Izzy confesses that truth, which is like kind of, again, almost, we're getting us towards the end of Izzy's like redemption arc, where he is finally owning up to this thing that he did that was really bad. He hasn't apologized for it yet, but that's because why he wouldn't apologize to Steed for that. But the fact that he's confessing to it is, as a bad thing, kind of showing that he has finally come to understand that it was bad. Like, he has really learned from his mistakes. And the other thing that him confessing this does is it gives Steed this final, like, peace in his mind to really understand where Ed was coming from. Like, he didn't fully get it, because he, up until this point, had thought Ed's spiral was just about Steed leaving him, and now he understands it was also about being forced back into that role of being Blackbeard. And so Steed can now understand why that is so, like, heinous for him. Like, he gets that this is such an upsetting thing for Ed. So he's like, shit. And like, he's like, get up, Izzy. And Izzy's like, if you want to fight, you want to hit me, whatever, like, I deserve it. And Steed, as always, like, I don't give a fuck about you, Izzy. I do not care. I do not care about you. I need to go talk to Ed. Right now. Get out of my way. So get up. So he gets up and he's about to go. Backtrack to Jen. So we saw her, she found the thing on the ground. She's like, what's this? And so we would have seen one other scene at some point along the way where she's like got someone cornered and she's like, what the fuck is going on? And we don't know what the fuck's going on yet, but we know she is on the case. And so now Steed is about to run off to go find Ed, and here comes Zhang, and she's like, I'm challenging you right now, Steve Bonnet. Let's fight. Let's go. And Steve's like, what the fuck? I don't want to fight you. And Zhang, she's got her sword out. She's coming for him. She's like, honestly, I don't want to fight you either. And I'm not gonna kill you. I'm just gonna fight you. I'm gonna beat you a little bit in front of all these people. Because it turns out, remember the fans who were talking about, like, oh my god, Steed, I heard you beat Jay and stole your shit back out from under her nose. Steed is the cool guy now, and Zhang is lame. Like, everyone's like, Steed is so much cooler than Zhang. Like, he beat her. He's better than her. He's cooler. I don't want to be on Zhang's stupid crew. I want to be a part of Steed's, like, fanboys. That's why people have been quitting. Because they think Steed's cooler than her. And so she is like, I gotta fight you in front of everyone, and I gotta beat you in front of everyone to prove that I'm better. Like, it ain't personal. I just gotta do this. And so she's like, sword fighting him, and he's like, kind of like, running away. Like, he's not really fighting her. He's like dodging because he doesn't want to fight her. He's got more important shit to worry about. And so she's like, as he ran around, she's like, wait, hold up. The thing you said to me before about the fleet and like your plan with the fleets, was that real, or were you just telling me what I needed to hear? And she's like, well, I was telling you what you needed to hear, But no, that is real. That actually happened to be the truth. And in fact, I have already made a deal with the English to, not have to be pirates anymore. And Steve's like, okay, so just to clarify, in your fleet, technically we're called pirates, but we don't, and we're still part of the pirate community. We don't actually have to do any piracy. Like, we're not really pirates in any way. And Zhang's like, yeah, more or less. And Steve's like, okay, great, I want to join your fleet. And so there we go. This is like, Steed is like, you can see that Steed has thought, okay, maybe this is a solution to our problems, right? If we're part of Zhang's fleet, I can still be a part of this community that I'm like excited to be a part of and like has accepted me for who I am, but we don't actually have to be pirates in any capacity to, accommodate Ed's needs. And like, honestly, I don't love that this is still a solution that Steed is kind of coming up with on his own and just like pursuing without talking to Ed first. Like, that's not ideal. But also I'm kind of constrained by, I'm just trying to rewrite the existing episodes. I'm not trying to come up with like a whole new thing. So within that constraints, I think it works reasonably well. And it also kind of gives us something to stakes, extra stakes. So not only do we like Zhang's fleet, just because, Zhang is our friend in this version and we kind of like what she's doing and we kind of want it to succeed. Now we really want it to succeed. So we're like, okay, here we go. We got it. We figured out a solution to Ed and Steve's problems, how they can continue to like be pirates without having to be pirates, just like Ed wants. So like, we're really in on this and we're really excited about it, which makes it that much more, like, actually makes it impactful when the bombs go off and the fleet is totally destroyed. Like, that was our win. We had it, and now it's all gone. So yeah, there's where we end on that. And then also, now Zhang's fleet is meaningful to our actual main storyline too by doing that. So yeah, that's where the episode ends. So it still has Ed like off in a way, so he's not there during the attack. I assume that was the point of the breakup. But in such a way where they weren't actually broken up. Like, they were just having a fight. Ed walked away to get some space, and that's why he was gone. And we still have ending on Zhang and Steed fighting, and so they're the two, like, they're together, like, in physical proximity when the actual attack happens. So that's how they're the two that they get away on their own, and they're separate from everyone else. So we kind of still have everyone in the same places, just really big changes in terms of how we get there. So, which then brings us to the last episode, episode 8, Merman. So we are going to open with Ed. We're back in time a little bit during our open. Where Ed is like walking along the beach and he's like fuming. He has just walked away from this fight with Steed and he is so mad about it. And then like walking and like just like in his head, not paying attention too much where he's going, and then kicks something and he looks down and look at this. It's a message in a bottle. And he comes in, he opens it up and he reads it, and it's one of Steed's letters. And he's like so moved. And then he looks up and he sees this like maybe like this like little cove or something, and the beach is just littered with messages in the bottles. Like, obviously there was something going on. Steve threw the bottle from the same spot every day, and there's something going on with the currents. They all washed up on the same beach, basically. And then we can kind of cut to now it's nighttime, and I guess he got a torch or a lantern from somewhere at some point. But he's sitting there, and he's now got like a pile of letters sitting next to him, and he's like reading this last one before he puts it on top of the pile. And so then he's like, crying about these letters because, Steve wrote him so many beautiful, lovely letters. And he's like, he's ready to go back to Steve and like make up with him. And then we get explosion. And so we're seeing the fight, the attack on the Republic of Pirates, but he's like far away from it. So we're keeping that budget in mind. So we don't have to see a whole lot of it. He's far away, but he sees it tapping. Maybe he can see some ships in the distant harbor, like some of them on fire, and you see some other ones like shooting cannons at the Republic, the English ones, that is. So he's like oh my God. So he sees that going down, and he's like, oh my God, Steve. And he like starts to run, and then he like pauses and he looks out in the ocean, and he goes and he runs in the ocean, and he goes, and we see him like swimming down to get his leathers, and like you could do like with flashes of like from the cannon finder and whatever, like you can make it real dramatic, real cool. And then he comes out of the ocean and he's wearing his leathers because he's like, he's ready to go do what he has to do to go save Steve. It's very dramatic. Doesn't make sense that he could get changed in the ocean. That's kind of one of the things that doesn't make sense that the show really runs on. I'm good with it. It's very dramatic, very beautiful. I love it. So there we go. That's kind of what we're gonna do for this opening scene with Ed instead of the weird ass fisherman allergy medicine commercial. Like, I guess Ed is friggin', he's cleared and clear. Ed is out here eating Activia or whatever. It's a fucking weird sequence. Like, I see the joke that they're going for, but it's another one, and I haven't mentioned it every time. I feel like there are a number of these throughout the season, but it doesn't really make sense to the character that Ed would be like that. Like, that doesn't feel like Ed to me, where he's like all fucking eat, pray, love out of nowhere. It's weird, and I don't care for it. It's so long. It's such a fucking long sequence. And then the whole thing with the fisherman, with like the whole like pop, it's not really Ed's behavior. I don't get why he's like also like weirdly like ingratiating himself, like subservient, like people pleaser towards this guy, pop, like it's weird. And also like this whole thing where he's like the simple fisherman, the simple life, and the simple like he's not the rich out of touch one like that. I mean, that would be a little much even coming from Steve, but like that was more of a, if anyone was gonna be saying something like that, well, it would be like Ricky, but in our main crew, it would be Steve. And it doesn't make sense. None of that makes sense from Ed, and it was just weird and like kind of pointless interlude. And also, it creates this sort of thing where like Ed has been talking about retirement for a while, right? And so here he finally has gone off to retire, and then immediately he's shitty at it and it goes poorly, and it's not even like it would work if the problem was like he was missing Steve. Like he went to go do it and it wasn't satisfying, and it isn't satisfying because he realizes he's missing Steve, and that's why he goes back. Like that could still work, right? But this is just, the retirement doesn't work because he's shitty at it and he doesn't know how to be a fisherman. And literally Pop tells him, if you ever go anything, go back and do that. And it turns out it's piracy. He needs to go back and be a pirate. And like, I don't know, it makes me feel stupid for ever thinking Ed should retire. Which I don't like that. But then the episode still ends with him retiring anyways. And it's like, I thought you just established that he was bad at this. Like, what are you trying to do? What is the message here? It doesn't make sense. So just get rid of all of it. I don't like it. Okay, so back to Steve and Zhang. So now the morning after, there's like this other weird thread throughout this episode where like we're back to laughing at Steve because he's so cringe fail or whatever. Like Steve tells Zhang that, you know, makes a comment to Zhang about how he like rescued her and like pulled her out of the wreckage or whatever, and she's like, I did that for you. And like, you know, after they fight the guys on the beach, he's like, you know, Zhang and Ed are like complimenting each other about how cool they are, and like, she's like, I was pretty cool too, you guys. And they're like, yes, you did great. Super condescending, kind of. And just like throughout it, it's just like this whole vibe, especially from Zhang to Steve, that actually Steve are like cringe fail dude again. And like, that's not satisfying. In the finale of, first of all, they didn't know if it was going to be the series or season, just the season finale, but like, it's not satisfying in a season finale, and it's really not satisfying in a series finale, where this is like, Steve is like supposed to be like growing into his own to a certain degree, and like, but now all of a sudden this last episode is just all about jokes about him being cringe fail, and it's weird, and it's like, it's just not good. Like, again, it feels like jokes at the expense of character, and like in this case, like character arcs and plots and all that. So yeah, we're cutting those out. Instead, we just, actually genuinely did drag Zhang to safety. Because, I mean, beyond, like, the cringe fail jokes, it just makes more sense. Like, Zhang was clearly in shock the last time we saw her. Like, that explosion went off and she just, like, was not processing anything. So it makes a lot more sense. And then when we get to this scene, she is not, like, full shock anymore, but she's definitely still, like, totally apathetic. She's just not engaged at all. So it makes way more sense that she was in shock and Steve grabbed her and dragged her away, and she has like kind of come out of the shock at this point, but still has just not been able to engage in anything yet. That follows. It does not follow that she was in shock, came out of shock, dragged Steve to safety of all people. Like, Olu was right there. Like, why? Like, yeah, sure, Steve was closer to her than anyone else, but like, in canon, she doesn't seem to like Steve at all. So why is she going out of her way to save him? Like, I would believe that Steve would shades. I would believe that Steve would save Zhang, even if he was like didn't really like her that much. But like in this version, we're also mentioning that they're more friendly with each other. But like, it's weird that Zhang would choose to save Steed. So she came out of her shock, grabbed Steed, saved him, and got them to safety, and then went back to being like apathetic to the point where she is like going into town like suicidal basically in a minute. It's weird. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it seems to only exist so he can make a joke about Steed saying that he saved her and she can correct him. So yeah, he saved her. Then we have, then the two, like, not pirates, they're soldiers. The two soldiers attack him, and we can still have the, like, kind of joke where Steve tries to get a jump on him, and it's not successful, and then Zhang has to, like, step in and intervene. Like, that's fine. Like, Steve's not great at sword fighting. Like, he can kind of handle himself a little bit. Like, he can be tricky and clever, and so we saw him get the jump on them. But when it doesn't work out and when he has to actually be like in a one-on-one physical fight, it's just not something he's good at. Like, that's valid. That makes sense for the character. Like, that can be fine as a joke. So it works because now we see that's the thing that galvanizes Zhang to stand up, and she's going to start like walking into town, and Steve's chasing after her. Like, we cannot just go into town. We have to come up with a plan. Okay. So then we had the scene with Ricky and like when he's talking to them in the jail cell or whatever. Like, we have that fine, but the scene with Izzy where all of a sudden like Ricky is like fucking just creaming himself over Israel Hans, the coolest pirate that ever lived, and like Izzy is now fucking Mary Sue. He's fucking backlit with like a fucking halo. With everyone else just like fawning and laughing over the cool and funny jokes that he says when he's like ripping and Ricky. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird. I don't want it. I don't like it. They can like Izzy better, but he's not like awesome, the coolest person that ever lived. It's weird. So we're cutting all that. So Ricky just comes out and talks to prisoners a little bit, just so we can kind of establish that they're there and they're prisoners. Okay. Then we have Zhang and Steve, they're walking back. Zhang is like going to get herself killed, and Steve is kind of like, hey, can we come up with a plan first? And Zhang's just not about that. But instead of them like getting hijacked by like a bunch of soldiers and like all that, I want to change up this a little bit so that it's just one soldier, right? He has, this one soldier, he's got a gun, and he's like holding it on Zhang and Steed, and like also I think maybe he like kind of shoots and maybe gets Zhang's little leg a bit, like she's not like in terrible shape, but she's gonna be limping a little bit, right? And that'll come back later. But he's still got his mustache, and maybe he's got like a bayonet on it, which is why he's technically one shot now he's got to reload. But anyway, so he's holding him up, and all of a sudden Ed comes behind and just like hits him with a rock, which kind of can leave it up in the air. Another thing with this whole episode is just Steve and Ed both do a lot of killing in this episode, which is weird because, like, in the prior season, that was like a lot of trauma wrapped up in that for both of them, right? Like, Steve had a lot of trauma. He did kill Nigel. Like, he didn't murder him, but he definitely killed him. It wasn't on purpose, but like, he did not kill Chauncey at all, even remotely. But he had a lot of trauma wrapped up around that. So to have him just like casually murdering people, like just mowing down soldiers by the ton, and it's like not even a thing. It's just weird. Like, I ain't mad about it per se. Like, I believe that Steve is justified in doing it in that situation. But it's like just weird to have that be such a big trauma point for him in the first season. And then this season, it's just like, you know, he kills Ned and it seems traumatic for a minute. And then after that, it's just like, whatever. And then same thing with Ed. Like, he had that whole big thing about how his dad is the only person that he ever killed himself directly. And like, he had all sorts of caveats on that. And that's fine. It's his personal trauma and the way he feels about it. It's whatever. I didn't have any problem with that, but it is weird that now he is just killing a bunch of soldiers directly, and it's not a problem at all. Like, it's not even a thing. Because for Ed, I could see him being able to do that actually being a sign of him healing from his trauma, right? Because it is such a weird, specific mental distinction that he has, where he like was super comfortable with like ordering people dead and stuff. Like, so it wasn't, so that's fine. It was just that he had a specific trauma about him directly being the one to kill them. And so the idea that if he heals from that, then he would be comfortable with directly killing people in the same sort of situations where he was previously comfortable with ordering them dead. Like, that feels like a healing of trauma to me. So that would be fine, except for we never do anything like that. It's just, he's just suddenly fine with killing all these British soldiers without ever having unpacked that trauma at all. So it's weird. It's weird. And I think we should just avoid that. So Ed hits the soldier on the head with the rock, and we just really won't address whether the guy is dead or not. Like, we'll just skim past that part. And it's fine. We can skim past that part pretty easy because Ed and Steve now have like seen each other and they're reunited and like, oh my god, and they're happy to see each other. And because we didn't do this whole big battle of it, we can have a few extra minutes for this actual reunion for them to like apologize and like legit apologize. And where Steve can apologize to Ed, like, I'm sorry, I didn't really understand how traumatic that was for you. Like, and I'm sorry, I wasn't listening, I wasn't paying close enough attention to what your needs were. Like, I was too caught up in my thing to pay attention to your thing, right? That was his thing. And then Ed is like, no, I'm sorry. Like, you told me that you needed time to think about it, and I wasn't giving you time. Like, I just went ahead to do my own thing. Right? That's the thing that we've been building up. Like, we're building stuff up, and now they're apologizing. They're growing. So have them chance both say sorry. Then Ed can say, I love you. And then Steve is not gonna Han Solo him. What the fuck? I hated that so much. I don't even like it when Han Solo did it. At least with Han Solo, it was in character. Like, sometimes that can work, but it only works in situations. Yeah, I don't need to get into it. It didn't work here. Steve just says, I love you back. Or you could even have him like ask Ed, like, is it okay? Am I allowed to say it now? Because, you know, right? Ed told him before, you don't get to say that to me. And so, like, Steve's asking for permission, in which case, of course, Ed would say yes. And then Steve would say, I love you. The real important part is that Steve says, I love you, right? And they kiss, and then Jenny's like, great. Now what? Can we go? Do we have to, like, I don't care about this. And so then Steve like, okay, yeah, great. Introduce Ed and Jenny, and he's like, okay, can we come up with a plan now, right? Like, he points the soldier on the ground, like, we can come up with a plan now? Yeah? Okay, so, right, now we'll go back to Jackie's, and instead of the whole, like, where they just, like, randomly, and burst in, like, I don't know. Oh, I forgot to mention, so when Steed and Ed reunite, you know, like, Ed has somehow managed to ascertain that there are prisoners hidden in Jackie's, so he thought Steed was maybe in there, and, like, he just, you know, was trying to figure out how to get in and to break them out when they came across each other, and Steed was like, you know, didn't know where Ed was, and Ed's like, you know, yeah, you know, didn't, you know, I saw the attack happen last night, and they come check it out, but I couldn't find you, or something like that, right? The point is, Ed has seen that there's prisoner Jackie, so that's how we know that where we need to go. And so they found each other, and so they're gonna go and come up with a plan. So now we go into Jackie's, and so instead of this like random bursting in, and then Jackie has already poisoned everyone, which, like, honestly, that could be a good beat in like any other episode. It would be a good beat. But this is our series finale. We need our protagonists to be the heroes that save the day. And so Jackie, like, having randomly already poisoned everyone, like, does not work. So, but we're going to use that for inspiration. So what we're going to have happen, Steve and his assistant, Jeff, are going to come in. And so, like, Ed will probably have him take his leather jacket off. So, like, that's his disguise. He's not wearing the leather jacket. So Steve, his assistant Jeff, have come in, and like they've got Zhang, and you know she's limping a little bit from her gunshot wound, and her hands are tied up, and so like they got her like on a leash. And Steve's like, I brought you a present, Ricky. I can call you Ricky, right? Like, we're still friends. And he's like, men of our standing, you know, something about, you know, we know items of value when we see them, right? Call back to, I forget exactly how Ricky said that line. But, you know, when Ricky had said that line in the first episode, Steve is coming back in and calling back to that, bringing, you know, Ricky this little gift of Zhang. So, like, there's the start of their plan, right? It works because Ricky was, like, such a huge Steve fanboy. So it makes more sense that he would continue to be a Steve fanboy instead of suddenly become an Israel Hansen boy. Like, it just works better, right? And then now we get to actually see Steve and Ricky, like, that relationship actually has something come of it. It's so weird the way that, like, Ricky was, like, a big Steve fanboy in the first episode, and then it went poorly, and then Ricky literally never talks to Steve, thinks about Steve at all, ever again for the rest. Like, that's weird. It's weird. So we're going to pay it off instead. So, you know, Steve takes advantage of Ricky being a fanboy in order to get in. So they're like, okay, Zhang is the prisoner, and he's like, great, have her taken down there. So Zhang's going to be taken down to the prisoners, and of course, when she gets taken down, the ropes weren't actually tied, or like it was like an easy to get out of knot, and now she's gonna free the prisoners. And you could still have them like halfway to freeing themselves when she comes down, and like there's like an awkward moment where like the guards like sees them about to escape, and he's like, and then she gets free, and she's like, yeah, I was coming to save you guys. So we have that happening, and then whatever reunion that we need to happen between Zhang and Auntie can happen at that point too. Like, I don't know, it was weird. Like, they didn't seem to have this relationship where Zhang was like really wanting Auntie to be proud of her or anything. But I mean, they definitely had a relationship of some kind. Like, they seemed like they were closer friends. So definitely something really can happen at that point. Anyway, so back upstairs, so we have Ricky and Steve like sitting down to each other, and Steve tells Jeff to get drinks for everyone, you know, another round on me. And so they're passing around drinks to everyone, and you know, Steve and Ricky are talking, and then all of a sudden, you know, the soldiers start passing out, and Ricky's like, oh my god, what did you do? And like, or at some point, Steve, how I don't know how exactly we want to order this, but the friggin' piracy means family and family means no one gets left behind. Like that speech that Izzy gives, it's so weird out of Izzy's mouth. It's like, it does not sound like something Izzy would say. And also it's weird that we're giving like this thesis statement to Izzy. Steve will say, like, that's a Steve speech. So Steve gets to give the speech, the soldiers start dropping, and how are they dropping? It's the chamomile again, right? It's the same trick. He's using it again. Call back. He's dosed them all with chamomile. They're all falling asleep. And oh God, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention this. We were going to set this up in the previous episode when, you know, the crew are all doing their whole Steed, like, shtick, the grifting, selling Steed merchandise to everyone. They can't do the Ned planks. So instead they're going to do the Steed chamomile about, you know, how he managed to, you know, knock all the Zhang's crew out with the chamomile towels, right? And so like they were selling that. So we set that up, and then Steve used it in this episode to knock all the soldiers out. So just like fun little thing like that. And then it could have knocked Sweet out too, which is fine because he's just asleep. He's not poisoned. Though the idea of Jackie poisoning training everyone in her household is pretty funny. So sad to miss that, but I like the idea of Steve and Ed and like Jane gets to be along for the ride. But like them having put together the plan and them being the ones to save the day. Because obviously Ed as Jeff was one who's serving the chamomile tea to everyone. So yeah, they all pass out asleep, and then we have the whole, we're gonna have this like plan to get away, and they talk about it. So the whole thing in the canon version is like, it's weird in that it's just not really. So they're doing the thing, and it's like a valid thing to want to do, where you don't tell the audience the plan ahead of time, so then they can see the plan play out, and that keeps the tension, right? If you tell the audience the plan, and then the plan plays out the way it's supposed to play out, it's like boring. You just told us the thing, and then you showed us the exact same thing, right? But you know, versus if you tell the audience the plan and then it goes to shit, that works, right? Because then they have a plan, they know what they're expecting, and then it doesn't work. And so we get to see it fail and how they get through that. But, like, so that's a thing, but that also is predicated on us, like, actually knowing the stakes of the plan. Like, they tell us so little. And canon, it's hard to tell even what's going on or why they're doing what they're doing. To this day, I'm not entirely sure why they had to attack all these soldiers. There is like a sort of barricade in the road, I guess, a little bit. Like, and they are definitely on like a dirt road of some kind. But like, they could have just snuck around them. They're just trying to get to the beach back to where the revenge is. Like, if that's the only point of the plan, then like they just need to sneak around them. If the plan was like they were hoping that they were going to be able to force Ricky to like tell everyone to go and like that would actually work, then that was a stupid plan, and everyone was right to tell Steve it was a stupid plan. But also, if that was the plan, then they should have told us that was the plan so we could see that it went wrong and see how that they, you know, like, tried to handle it. So I don't know for sure what the plan even was. And so I don't know for sure why they had to do any of what they did. I don't have a clear understanding of like what the obstacles were. Yeah, it just doesn't work. It's not clear at all what they were trying to achieve and to what degree they were successful. Obviously, well, I assume Izzy dying wasn't part of the plan. Oh no, maybe Steve is some 4D chess level that I can't even understand. But so presumably that part was the plan going wrong, but I don't know how much of the rest of it was like it went wrong, or how much was like Ricky was just be a distraction while the rest of the crew, you know, got ready for the ambush so that they can then ambush them and attack them. I'm not clear on why they need to attack these soldiers, but so yeah, it doesn't work. So instead, what we're gonna have happen is, so they're put everyone to sleep, and we're also just gonna have Ricky be put to sleep. Like, they kept him awake and like had this whole thing, like the canon where they're like, well, we can't kill him though because we might need him. We're just gonna have him fall asleep and we're just not gonna talk about him. So we're just not gonna think about what could we have killed Ricky? Should we have done that for revenge? Like, we're just gonna kind of like skate over it. Like, just don't worry about it. So their plan, like, what are they gonna do? And so we're gonna be very clear. Okay, so this is our objective is, we cannot, there's too many soldiers here, there's not enough of us, we cannot clear them out. So our objective is we're gonna try to escape back to the Revenge, because the Revenge, like, Zhao Zhang's ships were taking up the docks before. So the Revenge is actually like anchored like off this beach, like a little ways away. So if we can get back to that beach, we can have our dinghies are there on the beach, we can take them back to the Revenge and we can escape. That's our plan. Make a clear statement of what our objective is, and then we're gonna make a clear statement. Our obstacle is all these soldiers who are like walking around, right? We have to get past them. And like, sure, Ed and Steed and Zhang were able to sneak around kind of back in whatever, they could sneak around, but there were only 3 of them, right? Now we have this whole big group. We're not gonna be able to just sneak around with this whole big group, but we're not big enough to get past the soldiers, like fight our way past. So how are we gonna do this? What are we gonna do? Okay, well, what we need is we're gonna need a distraction, right? We're gonna have someone run out there like as bait to pull the soldiers away and distract them. So like, they're gonna chase after this person, so then the group can get to the beach and get to the ship and get things ready, get ready to set sail. And then the person who was like the distraction, they'll circle back and meet us on the beach. So like, then we can get to the ship as quick as possible. Like, everyone else is already on the ship. We got one dinghy waiting, everyone else on the ship, we're ready to go. We're just waiting for this last thing and we can all go. Like, so that's our plan, right? And so who's gonna be, the distraction? And so like, Zhang maybe volunteers at first, but no, she got shot in the leg. Remember, she can't run fast enough to be a distraction. So then Ed's like, I'll be the distraction. I'll be Blackbeard, like, right? They're all gonna want to chase after Blackbeard, right? And this is when Izzy is gonna be like, no, I'll do it. And then everyone's like, I don't know that, sorry, but I don't think Izzy Hands is gonna be a big enough draw. Like, and he's like, no, I'll put on your stupid leathers. He's not gonna call them stupid. Izzy loves those leathers. I'll put on your leathers, and like, they're so stupid, they won't know. They'll see me in the leather jacket, they'll see me in the Blackbeard get up, and they just will see me in Blackbeard. Like, they're idiots. They'll believe it. And so that, like, here we're coming to this like completion of this arc, right? Previously, Izzy basically threatened Ed, like, go back to being Blackbeard or I'll kill you. And now Izzy's like, I will be Blackbeard so you don't have to, because I know you would rather die than do that again. So I will take that on for you, right? So it's like this ultimate gesture of apology from the emotionally constipated man that still can't apologize. Like, I'm gonna do that for you. I'm gonna be that for you. I will take on this role of Blackbeard. Like, kind of tense moment, but ultimately Ed agrees to that. Like, Izzy's gonna be Blackbeard. He's gonna pull them away. And so, like, that's their plan, right? So Izzy goes back out there. He's gonna be Blackbeard. He's leading them away. It works because they are in fact all fucking idiots. They buy it. They're chasing him. So then the rest of them, like, then go to the beach, and we can maybe have like one little group of soldiers that Izzy didn't draw away, but they have to fight or whatever if we want to have some degree of action in this scene. But okay, so they all get to the ship, and they're on the dinghies, and they're all going back, and we've got one dinghy left, and it's Ed and this dinghy, and he's waiting for Izzy, right? So Izzy comes back, he's circling it back around, and he's coming down the beach, he's running, and he is gonna make it, you guys. At least the soldiers are chasing him, but they're they're far back. He is gonna make it. He's almost there. He has reached the dinghy, and then like just jerks. There's a gunshot. He jerks. He has been shot. And Ed, like, you know, like pulls him in the dinghy, like he's like running and he's like rowing back, and Ed, and he's just bleeding out. And that's how he dies. We get him up on the ship, but he's bleeding out. He doesn't make it. And so we still get that deathbed apology. And like most of it, I do like the tenor of it, like the idea that Izzy is finally, as he's dying, he has finally found the words, finally been able to actually apologize and actually say, you know, the things that he has been trying to like imply all along, that he's sorry, that he realizes that what he did was wrong. It was wrong of him to try to push Ed to be Blackbeard when he knew that that wasn't like good for him anymore. I do want to change, like there were a couple of little lines that I would tweak. Like one definitely is, instead of Ed saying, you know, you're my only family, let's have him say to Izzy, I need you here, which is also, it's going to be a callback back to that episode 4 again, right? At the end of the episode 4, when Izzy is like going to pack up to leave and Ed's like, you can't quit, and you know, he spends the whole like retirement plan. He spins the plan about, we're going to fake Blackbeard's death. And we're going to have this guy, and he's wearing Blackbeard's clothes. He is like running back to Blackbeard's ship, you know, and like, you see, and so he's like, that's the plan, and that is what has happened. Izzy was wearing Blackbeard's clothes. Everyone thinks he's Blackbeard, and now he's died. So Blackbeard is dead. It's that fulfillment of that setup. But the payoff of it, of course, is Izzy all along. That was going to be the one to die in Blackbeard's place, because that really was what Izzy wanted all along. Is Izzy really wanted, ultimately he wanted to become Blackbeard, right? That was the promise too, that Izzy was going to get to replace Ed as, I mean, not as Blackbeard, but he was going to replace Ed as captain. So like metaphorically, he was going to replace Ed as Blackbeard. So that was the thing all along. Like that was the foreshadowing all along. And so we get that line from that moment, I need you here. Only it has transformed now. Originally when he was saying it, it was more like a, you are my employee. I need your help to, you know, do this job that I need to get done. I need you here. And now it is on that more emotional level, right? That I need you here. Like emotionally, I'm not ready to let go of you, to let go of this relationship. And then you can have Izzy come back and say, like, you don't need me. You're surrounded by people who care about you. And then he will correct himself, who love you, right? From the beginning of the season where he couldn't say, I love you. He's like, I care for you. Now he can finally say it as he's dying. He can use the word love. Good for you, Izzy. We knew you could do it. And then he'd be like, look, and you don't have anything left to bribe me with, right? Coming back to that, you know, episode 4 last season where Ed was trying to bribe Izzy by saying, yeah, you'll get to take over as captain. And he's like, I got to be Blackbeard and you got nothing left to bribe me with. Like, that's the end of it. And so that's when he can be like, and so now you just be it, right? So that's Izzy's death. He has a very heavily foreshadowed death, and it's a very meaningful death. He did not just go out like a bitch because the plan didn't work. He went out sacrificing himself to save everyone. It wasn't an intentional sacrifice, but he did intentionally take the riskiest job to save everyone else and to save Ed from having to be Blackbeard again. Like, real hero's death. If we're going to give him a redemption arc, that's what he deserves. And also one other thing with that apology, when Izzy says, like, he says something like along the lines of Blackbeard was us, just reframe that to me, Blackbeard was us, or I always thought of Blackbeard as us. Something that makes it a caveat that he's not like literally stating that. It's just like how he felt about it. Just because, like, I mean, like, that's the whole thing that he's supposed to be learning here, is that it was not appropriate for him to try to claim ownership over, like, Ed's behavior in this expression of himself, like, to try to force Ed to be Blackbeard, and yet he's still claiming ownership of the, like, Blackbeard identity as he's making this apology. Like, it's just weird. It's fine for him to say, to me, Blackbeard was up. Like, he's expressing how he felt and why he felt entitled to behave that way. But when he just says Blackbeard was us, like, as though it's like a true statement, I don't love that. So yeah, good for him. Hero's death. Then we have the the funeral for him, and like, that's fine. Then with Zhang talking to Ed and Steve, like, afterwards, and like trying to make that bargain with him. First of all, I would change Zhang's line from like wanting to like kill that guy, like as she wants specifically to get revenge on Ricky, to just like those guys or whatever, or the guys, whatever, like just more general, like she wants revenge on the British Navy, like, as a whole, for what they did. Just because, first of all, if she's not specifically seeking revenge on Ricky, we don't have to question why we didn't just kill him when we had the chance. And which, you know, we're trying to just kind of skim past that. So continue to just kind of skim past that. And then also, again, when we're coming from a position of we don't know at this point if this is going to be the last episode just in the season and we're going to get a third season, or if this is going to be the last episode of the series altogether, if we leave it open-ended that Zhang is got to get revenge after this one specific villain, that feels like a really dangling plot thread. If we leave it as Zhang is wanting to get revenge against the British Navy, like, it's still kind of a dangling plot thread, but it seems less, I don't know, it seems less urgent to me, like less dangling to me than if it was like one specific guy that we're trying to get. It's like, it's just like such a big nebulous concept of what she wants to get revenge on. Like, I don't know, it just feels a little less open-ended. Zhang's offer here to want to team up with Ed and Steve both, like, genuinely she wants both Ed and Steve on her team. It's weird that, like, Steve felt like an afterthought and, like, was clearly only an offer that she made because she knew that Blackbeard was going to want to bring his boyfriend, so. Yeah, no, so, like, genuine. Like, Zhang, we like Zhang, she's our friend, and we're not making cringe jokes about Steve anymore, so, like, the point is, you know, this new version anyways of the season, Steve has finally come into his own, so she sees that and appreciates that. And then she is going to be like Pirate Queen, Gentleman Pirate, and Blackbeard. At which point, you know, Ed's going to be like, I'm not Blackbeard, that's Blackbeard. And, you know, pointing to Izzy's right. Again, we're calling back. It was all set up, you guys. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but, well, obviously they didn't because they didn't pay it off, but it would really feel like it was done on purpose, right? All set up. You know, that's Blackbeard. Blackbeard is dead. And then it's like, I'm just a regular pirate. And then have Steed interject. He's a pirate for now. You know, he is Steed acknowledging that that Ed doesn't want to be a pirate anymore. Like, even though Ed feels more comfortable with the idea of being a pirate now that he has, you know, doesn't have to be Blackbeard. He can just be like Pirate Joe, or Pirate Ed, I guess. But Steed is still, like, also conscious of the fact that, hey, like, also he just doesn't want to be a pirate. Like, again, they're paying attention to each other better now. So, but yeah, so just pirate for now, and then we can still kind of leave it open. And do they want to, like, join Zhang in this revenge quest or not? So then we have we have the wedding, so that's great. Then we have the panning shot of the ship where we see, like, all the crew up there. They're all doing great. Everyone's happy. And then we will cut back to Ed and Steve. And so the ending with them at the end. So my caveat, like, I've always been a fan of the idea of the two of them, like, retiring from piracy, retiring from, like, the seafaring life. Well, I guess if they wanted to be, like, a traveling dinner theater ship, that would be fine. But, like, retiring and, like, having, like, this domestic life on land somewhere, like, that was always my, like, ideal ending for them. So, like, to be clear, I like that as a concept. I don't like it here. Partially because the little place, it's a shitty, like, shack. It's falling down, and it's clearly not big enough to be an inn, even if it was in good shape. So I don't love that. Like, it feels like it doesn't feel good about their chances of success with this inn. It doesn't make me feel good about their retirement already. Like, I don't love that. But more importantly, while Ed retiring and wanting to retire and even wanting to become an innkeeper has been really well set up, nothing at all has ever been set up for Stede. Like, there's no indication that that's something that Stede would want. And even though I believe that he would, and that if Ed had told him that's something that he wanted and they actually discussed it, I believe that that would be something Stede would want. It never is ever discussed. We never talk about what Stede wants. And the only, like, he talks about the idea of, like, you know, Ed's like, you know, oh, maybe we should just avoid near-death experiences. And Stede just like, well, that would be hard in our line of work. And then he goes to, you know, the Republic of Pirates and he's living it up, loving being a pirate. Like, there's no indication that this is something that he was even remotely thinking about, would be interested in. Like, it's not good. Like, we don't care about Stede, whether Stede would want this or not. Like, there's nothing to set up. It doesn't work. I don't like that. I care about Stede getting an ending that he wants too. And that it's an ending that they both want. They've discussed and they agree on. So I'm not loving that. I'm also not loving it as like a choice for when we're trying to keep this ending ambiguous, when we don't know at this point if we're going to have a season 3. I mean, at this point we do, that we're not. But when it was being made, they didn't know. So I don't like it because and then it puts us in a position where, like, in order for season 3 to happen, they have to unretire. So again, either you have to have them like, well, we could pull them out of retirement for this one last job to go do whatever, in which case it makes season 3 feel a little bit disconnected from the other seasons. So it feels like season 1 and 2 are like this building of the story, and then season 3 is like the sequel rather than like a continuation of this 3-season arc of this story. Same thing if we just, like, honestly, season 3 is just them and their hijinks at the end would have been great on a certain level. Yeah, it's not ambiguous. Or the other option is, like, they try to retire and it went shitty and they were bad innkeepers and they had to go back to piracy, which, again, that doesn't feel good. Ed is, like, wanting to retire forever and then he tries to do it and it goes bad. Like, besides the fact that it's redundant, because he tried to retire to be a fisherman and it went poorly, and then now he and Stede tried to retire to become innkeepers and it also went poorly and they had to go back to be piracy again. Like, it doesn't feel good. I want them to be able to retire. Like, that's what Ed really wants, and it's been very clear that's what he wants. So I don't like that. Also, if they retire, I would like them to retire in a capacity where, like, the crew was somehow involved or something. Like, again, this supposed to be like this whole family thing. Like, Izzy dies talking about how you have family all around you, and then they immediately abandon that family to go live in a stupid little shack. It's weird. It doesn't work, I don't think. So instead, what we'll have is Ed and Stede. We still have Ed and Stede, but they're going to be in the captain's quarters. I'm picturing them, like, up in that windowsill, just like Stede was back in season 1, episode 8, crouched up in the windowsill like a little gremlin watching Ed and Jack on the beach. But no, this time Steed is up in the windowsill, but not crouched like a little gremlin. He's sitting there, and Ed is like sitting in, like, I guess not on his lap, probably like, but you know, in front of him, and like Steed is holding Ed. And they're just sitting there looking out the window. Maybe they're, you know, we can see the land in the distance. They're pulling away from it. And they're sitting there watching that happen, having a nice little moment. And then Ed says, hey, what do you think about becoming innkeepers? And this is like a proposal that he's making as something like to consider, right? Because he now knows that this is, you know, something that it's not something he's saying, let's do this right now. He has learned that Steed needs time to think. So he's just putting it out there as an idea. And he says, and you know, we get, what about the crew? And it's like the crew could come too. You know, we need Roach to be a chef, and you know, Frenchie can do entertainment, da da da. And Steed's like, you know, Steed maybe starts getting excited. He's like, oh, and like he's like, oh, and this film could do this and this, and pulls himself back. It's like, but of course we would have to discuss it with them first, of course. And then it's like, yeah, of course, just, you know, something to think about, right? They've learned, Ed has learned, he needs to give Steed time to think things over and kind of come to like accept a decision before he can just run into it. Steed almost got excited and ran away with himself, and then remembered, he's learned, you know, he needs to make sure that whatever thing he's excited with, he still has to make sure everyone else is on the same page and they want to do it. Can't just run away with some idea that he has because it's exciting for him. And that's where we can leave them with, like, you know, something to think about. And then they're cuddling in the windowsill. First of all, I love the idea that we can leave them cuddling instead of standing with enough room for Jesus in between them. Also, it gives us a good ambiguous ending where they are still on the ship and they're still there with everyone. So if we get a season 3, very easy to glide into season 3 and whatever we're doing in season 3. They didn't retire yet. Like, that's the only explanation you need. They were thinking about being an innkeeper. They just haven't followed through on it yet. Maybe they will by the end of the season 3, or maybe they don't. Maybe they do something else. Whatever. It's fine. It was something we were thinking about, but we didn't follow through on it yet. And if we don't ever get a season 3, then we leave them on the ship, and the people who want to still imagine them, like, don't like the idea of them retiring, can still imagine them just being on the ship and going on adventures forever. And the people who do like the idea of them retiring can just imagine, okay, well, they thought about it, and then they decided to do it, and they became innkeepers, and the rest of the crew did join them, or whatever portion of the crew that is emotionally satisfying for me joined them, and the rest continued to be, you know, pirates, whatever. It's ambiguous to where we can still slide pretty easily into another season, but gives us enough of an indication of here's what their happily ever could look like if we don't get a 3rd season, which would be great because they didn't. So it's good that we got that set up. And yeah, that was how I would rewrite it. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of closing thoughts I have a lot of closing thoughts. I just don't want to get into all of them. I don't know. I wasn't happy with season 2. And I think it could have been a lot better. I know there were a lot of things that were out of their control, like budget-wise, timeline-wise, but I also felt like there was stuff that was in their control where they just made bad choices. And this entire, however many hours, 3-4 hours, whatever, is my thesis statement on how they could have made better choices. Thanks for watching. Bye.